Hi guys, welcome to Midnight Anime Library. Starting with Roger's Ghost, I command an Invincible Soul Army Part 2 Chapter 21, Attention from Marine Headquarters, a 500 million bounty Marine Headquarters, Marineford. Bang! It wasn't the explosion of a cannonball, but the sound of a thick report being slammed heavily onto Fleet Admiral Sengoku's desk, like a brick. The air seemed to be shattered by that impact. Fleet Admiral Sengoku was pinching the bridge of his nose, trying to carve out a sliver of private time for meditation amidst the mountain of official documents. His Buddha-like face was currently twisted into the shape of a bitter gourd. This impact instantly shattered the tranquility in his mind. He slowly raised his head, his eyes carrying an indescribable weariness and a murderous intent. Report! Fleet Admiral Sengoku. A young Marine lieutenant commander stood at attention, saluting stiffly, cold sweat beading on his forehead. He tightly clutched another piece of intelligence, as if holding a bomb about to explode. Urgent intelligence from Alabasta. Alabasta. After composing himself, Sengoku reached out and took the telegram slip handed to him. His office was like a marketplace every day, there was never a moment of peace. But when his gaze swept over the contents of the telegram, the weariness and anger instantly solidified. His pupils visibly constricted sharply. On the telegram slip, several freshly inked words were like icy blades, stabbing directly into his eyes. Shichibukai crocodile. Defeated head-on by that underworld heretic Lin Yi. Crocodile severely injured and fled, Lin Yi completely unharmed. Sengoku's hand unconsciously tightened around the edge of the report paper, his knuckles turning white. He vaguely remembered the name Lin Yi. 10 years ago, when Roger was arrested and executed, the area around Logtown was in chaos. He had noticed a brat who exuded a strange aura. As a precaution, he had slapped an eye-catching bounty of 80 million berries on him. After that, for the past 10 years, this kid had vanished as if evaporated from the face of the earth, without any movement. He had almost completely forgotten about this person. Who would have thought that upon reappearing, he would directly take down a Shichibukai? And it was Crocodile, a Logia-type devil fruit user famously known as Invincible in the first half of the Grand Line. This wasn't 10 years of silence, this was sharpening a sword for 10 years, only to strike directly across the face of the Marines. Crunch, crunch in the office, the heavy atmosphere was completely shattered by a leisurely sound of crunching senbei. Veins bulged on Sengoku's forehead, a giant hashtag symbol almost materializing between his brows. He spun around abruptly, looking at the old man sitting on the sofa, crossing his legs, wearing a dog head hat, and loudly crunching senbei in his mouth. Garp! Sengoku squeezed out those two words from between his teeth. You're eating senbei in my office again. Ha 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 ha. The Marine hero Garp, completely unaware of how much trouble he was causing the fleet admiral, cheerfully patted his thigh, scattering crumbs. Sengoku, don't be so angry. Isn't it a good thing that trash like the Shichibukai gets defeated? It saves the world government the trouble of constantly supporting a bunch of time bombs. As he spoke, he popped another piece of senbei into his mouth, making a satisfied crunch sound. Sengoku looked at his carefree demeanor. A thousand thoughts of, "Are you trying to anger me to death?" roared in his mind, yet he was helpless. It's true that the Shichibukai are trash. Sengoku took a deep breath, trying to calm his emotions, then pointed at the report paper. But look at this report. Completely unharmed. How can a newcomer defeat Crocodile to the point of severe injury and fleeing while remaining completely unscathed? Can you afford to ignore strength like that? Oh yo! In the corner of the office, a lazy voice slowly sounded. Admiral Kizaru, at some unknown time, had already strolled over with his hands in his pockets. On his face, which usually held 3 parts sleaziness and 3 parts punchability, there was now a trace of faint surprise. How terrifying are all the newcomers this strong nowadays? He adjusted his glasses, squinting as his gaze swept over the report. Does this old man need to make a trip? Kizaru's tone sounded like he was asking what's for lunch, casual, yet carrying the ease of someone who could overturn the world at any moment. Forget it. Sengoku waved his hand, massaging his temples with a headache. The Shichibukai are not part of the Marines after all. If they are defeated by pirates, the ones who get a headache are the old men in the world government. Sengoku sighed wearily. Right now, everything felt wrong, especially seeing Garp pull out another senbei. Besides, Crocodile only fled because he was injured. His gaze fell back onto the report paper, pointing at the name Lin Yi. Now, let's discuss how much to raise the bounty for this underworld heretic Lin Yi. The office fell silent again, leaving only the sound of Garp crunching senbei, and Kazara's cryptic expression. Sengoku's brain began to operate at high speed. 80 million berries was a warning. Now, the opponent could defeat a Shichibukai head-on. This was no small matter. The world government needed a stance, the Marines needed deterrence. Someone who can beat Crocodile, this kid's strength is no longer something an ordinary vice admiral level can handle, Sengoku mused, tapping his fingers lightly on the desk. Garp shook off the senbei crumbs and continued eating while watching the show. Kazaro slowly picked at his fingernails. 500 million. Sengoku finally made the decision, his voice carrying an undeniable majesty. He looked at the intelligence report in his hand, his eyes as deep as a bottomless sea. An underworld heretic capable of defeating a Shichibukai, yet whose whereabouts are mysterious, this price is enough to make the entire sea take notice. He knew clearly that 500 million berries was not a small sum. It was enough to elevate Lin Yi into the ranks of the sea's top figures, making him a priority target for both the world government and the Marines. This Lin Yi, after remaining silent for 10 years, had shocked the world upon his debut. He smoothed out the crumpled intelligence paper again, then looked out the window at the azure sky of Marineford. 500 million berries. This kid was probably about to stir up monstrous waves across the sea. A few days later, on the deck of a sailboat sailing the Grand Line, a newsbird squawked, dropping off the latest newspaper and several bounty posters. Lin Yi picked up one, whistling softly. The bounty poster featured his face wearing a playful smile, beneath which was a line of conspicuous large text, DAD or Alive Underworld Heretic Lin Yi Bounty, 500 million berries. Beside it were 5 smaller bounty posters, showing the portraits of the Elite 5, with bounties ranging from 100 million to 300 million. Holy crap, 500 million! Lin Yi held up the bounty poster as if he had won the lottery, excitedly shouting, "I'm a great pirate now too." Chapter 22, Target Impel Down, Punching in for Work. 500 million. 500 million berries. Lin Yi sat cross-legged on the floor of the safe house, clutching the brand new bounty poster in his hand. His eyes were shining, and the only words coming out of his mouth were those few, as if his tongue were stuck. He brought the paper bearing his handsome face close to his eyes, almost kissing it. The expression on his face was a complex, foolish grin mixed with obsession, ecstasy, and the feeling of, "I've finally made it big." Old Luo, look quickly, 500 million. He turned his head and presented his treasure to the empty air. Converted, back in my hometown, that would be. Holy crap, that's enough for several large, luxury apartments in a first-tier city, right? The kind with good school districts. I'd be financially free immediately and could retire on the spot. The more he spoke, the more excited he became, already starting to plan his retirement life. Then, I'll just lie around all day, an ice-cold Coke in my left hand, and in my right. Such poor ambition. A lazy voice, carrying 3 parts disdain and 7 parts contempt, drifted over faintly. Roger's translucent phantom had condensed into shape at some point. He stood there with his arms crossed, looking at Lin Yi with the gaze one reserves for the foolish son of a landlord. A mere 500 million has you this delighted? Seeing how little exposure you have, I feel embarrassed for you. The foolish grin on Lin Yi's face froze, then instantly dropped. He grumbled indignantly, "Hey, the way you put that. Isn't 500 million a lot? Some Shichibukai don't even have bounties as high as mine. Do you know what this represents? It means your buddy is now a big shot on the seas." A big shot? Roger scoffed, floating in front of him. He extended a finger and poked the face on Lin Yi's bounty poster. At most, you're just a rather valuable target. Lin Yi choked on his breath and nearly passed out. Damn it, this old guy's mouth is more poisonous than sea stone. Fine, you're amazing, you're incredible. Lin Yi slapped the bounty poster onto the floor, deciding to give up caring. Then why don't you tell me how to stop being a target and how to become more valuable? Finally asked the right question. Roger nodded in satisfaction, slowly floating to the window, hands behind his back, striking a pose like a master guiding the world. I'll tell you a place. He paused, his tone laced with temptation. The goods inside, just pulling out any one of them would be enough to double your bounty. Lin Ye's eyes instantly lit up, like two 1,000-watt light bulbs. He sprang up from the ground with a carp flip, rushed over, and plastered a fawning smile on his face. Oh? Big brother, there's such a good deal? Where is it? Whose grave are you planning to disturb? Roger slowly turned around, a devilish smile curling his lips. He slowly, word by word, spat out 4 characters. I'm pell down. Put. Lin Yi had just taken a sip from the water cup on the table, but upon hearing that, he spat it out directly. A mist of water filled the air, refracting a dazzling rainbow in the sunlight. Cough, cough, cough. Cough. He coughed earth-shatteringly, his face turning the color of pig liver. He pointed a trembling finger at Roger. Are you serious, big brother? Impelled down? The world's #1 prison? Walls of bronze and ramparts of iron, impregnable. You want me to go there? Am I going there to feed the enemy? Others go there to feed the enemy. Roger looked at his wretched state, the mockery on his face growing stronger. You go there to stock up on inventory. He floated in front of Lin Yi and pointed at Lin Yi's chest. Don't forget your devil fruit ability. Your soul can change infinitely and simulate auras. Disguising yourself as a guard is practically a perfect infiltration plan. Besides, Roger's chin lifted slightly, carrying an arrogance that looked down on the world. I'm familiar with it. Lin Yi froze, his face full of disbelief. You're familiar with it? Ha! Roger chuckled lightly, the feeling akin to a top-tier tour guide bragging about the VIP groups he had led. The internal layout map of Impel Down, I could draw it with my eyes closed. The guard shift change times? Precise to the second. The blind spots of the surveillance transponder snail? I know them better than their parents do. He started counting on his fingers, listing things off like treasured possessions. The level 1 guard captain has athlete's foot. He needs to go to the infirmary for medicine every 2 hours, that's when his patrol area is the laxest. The level 2 beasts go into a frenzy when they smell a certain juice called crying grass, which can be used to create chaos. The staircase from level 3 to level 4, the 37th step is loose. Stepping on it will trigger an alarm. And Lin Yi listened, his eyeballs nearly popping out, his mouth open wide enough to fit an egg. This isn't the Pirate King? This is clearly the chief engineer of Impel Down's infrastructure. He even knows about their athlete's foot. What exactly did you do in there back in the day? You just need to disguise yourself as a new guard freshly transferred from a marine branch. Look confused, and no one will suspect a thing, Roger concluded, patting Lin Yi's shoulder with a tone as relaxed as if they were going on a picnic. I'll be your real-time voice navigation, I guarantee you smooth sailing, coming and going as you please. Lin Yi's breathing gradually grew heavy. His mind was no longer occupied with impenetrable fortress or 9 deaths out of 10 chances. Instead, what took their place were names shining brightly. Devil's Descendant. Douglas Bullet. The Solitary Red. Patrick Redfield. World Destroyer. Burndy World. And Golden Lion Shiki. No, at this time, the Golden Lion has already cut off his legs and fled. Even so, the great pirates imprisoned there are countless. Lin Yi was practically drooling. He grabbed Roger's arm, his face flushed with excitement. This isn't a prison. This is practically a retirement home for legendary great pirates. Diamond Suit, a giant card pool filled with living SSR cards. Just waiting for me to pull them. This overwhelming fortune, was it finally his turn? Seeing Lin Yi's greedy expression, as if he couldn't wait to rush in and cause chaos right now, Roger showed a knowing smile. How about it? he persuaded gently. Are you going to grind this dungeon or not? Grind it. I must grind it, Lin Yi said decisively, slamming his fist into his palm. Immediately. Right now. The flames of desire burned fiercely in his eyes, the craving for top-tier collectibles, the greed for a massive surge in strength. After this job, I'll jump directly from Shichibukai level to 4 Emperor's level. Lin Yi took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the ecstasy in his heart, his gaze becoming incomparably firm. What do I need to prepare? Guard uniform? Identification papers? I'll go get them now. A few days later. Grand Line, outskirts of Marine G1 branch. A massive steel gate spanned across the sea surface. 2 huge Chinese characters on the gate emitted a cold and majestic aura. Justice Lin Yi, wearing a brand new, crisp Marine Guard uniform, stood on the deck of a marine transport ship about to pass through the Gate of Justice. The sea breeze blew through his short black hair. Facing the seagulls, he quietly made a peace sign. New job, he silently recited, the corners of his mouth unable to stop curving upward. Punching in for work. Chapter 23. Hello, I'm Lin Dogdan, new guard Gudong. Lin Yi clearly heard the sound of his Adam's apple bobbing, which resonated like a stone dropped into a deep well in the dead silence of the air filled with rust and blood. His heart pounded like an overloaded blower, thumping against his ribs with each beat, making him wonder if he would have a heart attack the next second. Damn, this place, it's no place for humans. Don't be nervous, stand tall, and bring out the attitude you usually have when you argue with me. Roger's lazy, slightly mocking voice echoed in his mind like an annoying internal GPS navigation. Yes, that arrogant look. Make others think, oh, this guy has connections, he's not to be messed with. Go to hell. Lin Yi screamed internally, but his face already forced a smile that he thought was the most standard and arrogant. He followed a queue of expressionless guards, taking stiff steps into impel down level 1 Crimson Hell. As far as the eye could see, there was a forest of sharp blades. Prisoners, barefoot, ran and wailed under the guards' urging, each fall sprouting a trail of blood. Lin Ye's eyelid twitched violently, feeling phantom pain in his soles. Turn left. Roger's voice sounded again, calm as if directing an electronic game. The one ahead is a monitoring transponder snail, it sees you. Yawn at it, show your board, like you're just killing time, no one will notice you. Lin Ye's mouth twitched. This request is ridiculously detailed. He forced his facial muscles to move, opening his mouth wide in an exaggerated yawn, even squeezing out a few tears, perfectly acting like a tired young man dragged to work after an all-nighter. The giant transponder snail's eyes rolled, seeming to lose interest in him, turning elsewhere. Well done. Roger rarely complimented, but immediately added, just your expression was too exaggerated, like an idiot finally relieved after 3 days of constipation. Lin Yi took a deep breath, telling himself not to argue with a dead man. Beyond Crimson Hell, the bloody smell in the air faded, replaced by a stench of wild beasts and rotten food. Level 2, Beast Hell. Various giant, strange beasts rammed and roared madly in the cells. A scorpion with a chicken's head was tearing apart an unlucky prisoner like a spicy stick, the scene extremely bloody. Quick, hide in the right toilet. Roger's voice suddenly became urgent. The patrol team is coming, led by Domino, the deputy warden. She's strict with newcomers. Lin Ye's heart suddenly tightened, almost reflexively slipping into the stall with an indescribable smell, locking the door behind him. He had just leaned against the door when he heard a neat, forceful marching sound outside, and a clear, cold female voice. Check all areas. Kill any suspicious persons on sight. Lin Yi held his breath, not daring to make a sound. Remember to flush. Roger reminded quietly. There needs to be sound. A normal guard using the toilet won't be silent for half a day. Thanks a lot. Lin Yi cursed internally, then pressed the flush button with a trembling finger. Whoosh! The loud water sound successfully covered his pounding heart. Only after the footsteps faded did Lin Yi slide down like a puddle of mud, his back already soaked with sweat. I feel like I'm not here to steal something. He panted, mentally complaining. I'm here for a damn special agent exam. This is more thrilling than 996. My heart rate never dropped below 180. Exiting the toilet, he continued forward. Level 3, Hungry Hell. This was a scorching desert, prisoners deprived of food and water, turned into walking mummies under the blazing sun. The woman ahead in the tight leather jacket with a whip is the head guard, Sadie. Roger's tone became serious. Don't look at her, keep your head down, look at your toes, act like you're lost in thought. She has sadistic tendencies, especially likes training disobedient newcomers. Linya's neck chilled, immediately burying his head, staring at his shoes, thinking, who am I, where am I, what's for lunch? A thick scent of perfume mixed with leather wafted past him. He felt a gaze of scrutiny and amusement linger on his head for 2 seconds. Those 2 seconds felt like an eternity. Only when the gaze moved away did Lin Yi dare to sigh silently. After a series of tense maneuvers, Lin Yi narrowly passed the scorching level 4, arriving at a giant elevator. This was the only entrance to level 5. Phew! He leaned against the cold wall, exhaling deeply, feeling like he had just run a marathon, his whole body exhausted. Not bad. Roger's voice finally held a hint of genuine approval. Doing this well on your first try, you didn't embarrass me. Looks like you have more potential as a paparazzo than a pirate. Get lost. Lin Yi laughed, but felt immense relief. Roger's strategy was too solid. Every command was precise, perfectly avoiding all risks of exposure. This wasn't the Pirate King, this was a human walkthrough for Impel Down, a cheat code. He straightened up, adjusting his slightly disheveled collar, walking towards the tightly closed, frost-covered giant iron door. On the door, written in sinister letters, Level 5 Freezing Hell. Before he could approach, creak, the heavy iron door opened a crack from the inside. A bone-chilling, soul-freezing wind blasted out from the crack. Caught off guard, Lin Yi shivered violently, his hairs standing on end. He instinctively squinted, peering through the crack. In the dim, icy world, shadowy figures of frozen prisoners could be seen, contorted in various painful poses like ice sculptures. Among these ice sculptures, several massive, snow-white figures paced slowly. Their eyes gleamed with hungry green light, breath misting with ice crystals. Military wolves. The guard dogs of Impel Down Level 5. And giant military wolves. Lin Yi swallowed hard. Are the guard dogs here always so exotic? Chapter 24, Respecting the Elderly and Loving the Young starts with me. This cold was goddamn freezing, a physical cold that could seep right into the cracks of your bones. The moment Lin Yi poked half his body out of the elevator, a gust of wind mixed with ice shards slammed into his face, nearly forcing the breakfast he just ate back up his esophagus. Oh my goodness. He couldn't help but shiver, the hairs on his body instantly standing on end with a swish, like a field of startled wheat seedlings. The scene before him froze him completely. This wasn't a prison. This was the cruelest corner torn from the scroll of hell. An endless ice field, under the dim sky, was scattered with countless human-shaped ice sculptures, each frozen in the final, twisted, and agonizing posture of their lives. Biting cold winds whistled through the icy forest, emitting a mournful howl, as if countless lost souls were wailing. And among those ice sculptures, several giant wolves, as large as calves and entirely snow-white, paced leisurely through their territory with elegant yet fatal steps. Their emerald pupils glittered with hunger in the gloom, and every breath condensed into a visible white mist around their mouths. Calm down, rookie. Roger's languid voice was like handing over a cup of hot cocoa in a blizzard. It wouldn't warm the body, but it could at least warm the heart. These military wolves are trained to only attack prisoners. As long as you wear this uniform and don't provoke them, they'll treat you like air. Lin Yi swallowed hard, forcing sensation back into his legs, and stepped out with stiff movements. He felt like he hadn't walked into a prison, but into a massive, unplugged morgue. There wasn't even a hint of a living person in the air, only the deathly silence of ice and snow and the foul stench of despair. This place really is damn refreshing, huh? Lin Yi tugged at the corner of his mouth, feeling like his face was about to freeze solid. He disguised himself as a guard making routine rounds, hands tucked in his pockets, mimicking the nonchalant air of a veteran, and ambled across the ice field. The military wolves merely spared him a lazy glance before returning to tear apart the corpse of a prisoner who had just frozen to death, showing no interest in him, their colleague. See that one to your front left, at the 10 o'clock position, under the largest ice tree? Roger's voice echoed in his mind, like the most professional tour guide. That old fellow whose beard has turned into an ice block. Lin Yi looked in the direction indicated. It was an old man huddled beneath an ice cliff, so thin he was nothing but bone. His graying beard was covered in icicles, and his entire body had merged with the surrounding ice and snow. If not for the faintest, almost imperceptible rise and fall of his chest, Lin Yi would have mistaken him for another ice sculpture. Bonebreaker Kareem, bounty 380 million berries. Roger's tone was as flat as reading a menu. 20 years ago, he was someone who could stir up some waves in the latter half of the Grand Line, but alas, a hero grows old. He's almost gone, the flame of life inside him is weaker than a candle in the wind. Lin Ye's eyes instantly lit up. Appetizers are served. He rubbed his hands together, his face instantly shifting to an expression of deep sorrow and benevolent care, and walked toward the old pirate. He approached the old man and slowly squatted down, his movements as gentle as if he were afraid of disturbing something. "Old sir." His voice was so gentle it could squeeze out water, sounding exceptionally jarring in this frozen wasteland. The old man struggled to lift his eyelids. Lin Ye's benevolent face was reflected in his cloudy pupils. His lips moved, but no sound came out, only his teeth chattering uncontrollably. Lin Ye reached out and gently patted the old man's shoulder, which was as hard as stone, his tone growing even more mournful. "You look like you're in a lot of pain. Don't worry, I'll grant you release now. In your next life, be born into a better family and don't be a pirate again. See, this line of work has risks that are too high and no retirement pension." After speaking, he quietly watched the old man. A trace of blankness? Or perhaps relief? Seemed to flash across the old man's cloudy eyes. A drop of cloudy tear slowly slid from his eye corner, freezing into a crystal-clear bead of ice before it even reached his cheek. Then, his head lolled to the side, and his last breath dissipated. In the exact moment his flame of life was completely extinguished, a faint black phantom of the 10,000 souls banner, visible only to Lin Yi, swept silently over the old man's corpse like a flash of lightning. A soul, weak yet still solid, was precisely drawn into the banner. Success! Lin Yi stood up, brushed the snowflakes off his knees, and the grief on his face instantly vanished, replaced by a sense of sacred and solemn duty. He silently gave himself a thumbs up in his mind. "I guess this counts as end-of-life care service, right? You think I deserve a spot among the 10 outstanding guards who moved Impel down by year-end? Respecting the elderly and loving the young, sending people on their way, this level of awareness, this realm. You truly are a clever little imp," Roger's voice drifted over eerily, filled with undisguised mockery. "Your skin is thicker than the walls of Impel Down." Lin Yi pretended not to hear, his mood excellent. He repeated the process. Under the precise guidance of Roger, the gold medal headhunter, he found 2 more expiring great pirates. One was a former pirate captain whose legs had been bitten off by a military wolf, leaving him to wriggle on the ground and await death. Lin Yi walked over, expressing deep sorrow. "Brother, you'll spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair, how boring is that? I'll help you start a new game. Next time, remember to pick a hero with a mobility skill. Soul +1. The other was a hapless fellow who tried to escape but ended up frozen alive into an ice wall, with only his head exposed. Lin Yi squatted in front of him and helped brush the snow off his head, saying earnestly, "Look at you, stuck here, neither up nor down, how awkward. Let me give you a hand so you can completely integrate into this beautiful world of ice and snow." Soul +1. In just half an hour, Lin Yi had successfully sent off 3 great pirates with bounties in the hundreds of millions. Although their souls had greatly weakened due to years of imprisonment and torture, their foundations remained. As nourishment for upgrading the Elite 5, they were more than sufficient. TSK, such efficiency. Lin Yi stood on the ravaged ice field and stretched contentedly. If I had known Impel Down was such a treasure trove, I would have come. Sooner. This isn't a prison, it's a large-scale buffet themed around pirates. His courage grew with his harvest. A few washed-up stragglers were no longer enough to satisfy his appetite. His gaze involuntarily drifted toward the deeper reaches of the extreme cold hell. That place was where the true treasury lay. Level 6. Where the legendary, monster-level great pirates were imprisoned. Golden Lion. Bullet. Patrick Redfield. The mere thought of these names made Lin Yi's heart pound wildly, and his mouth nearly began to water. He rubbed his hands together, a lecherous smile spreading across his face, just as he was about to discuss with Roger how to sneak into the next floor. Suddenly, stop messing around. Roger's voice, for the first time, carried undisguised gravity and urgency. The main event is about to wake up. We need to hurry to level 6. That's the real treasury. The smile on Lin Yi's face stiffened, and he abruptly looked up. He saw, in the distance of the extreme cold hell, within the deepest darkness shrouded by ice fog, a massive, terrifying figure with dual horns and bat wings was slowly moving. The Warden, Magellan. Chapter 25, The God of War in the Toilet. Magellan, stop messing around. Roger's voice, for the first time, carried undisguised gravity and urgency. It was like a basin of ice water dumped over Lin Yi's head just as his heart began to swell, jolting him awake from the sweet dream of the buffet is delicious. The main event is about to wake up. We need to hurry to level 6. That place is the real treasure trove. The smile on Lin Yi's face instantly froze, and he abruptly looked up. He saw, in the distance of the extreme cold hell, within the deepest darkness shrouded by thick ice mist, a massive, terrifying figure with 2 horns on its head and bat wings on its back was slowly moving. That figure merely shifted slightly, and the seemingly eternal, dead silent atmosphere of level 5 immediately plunged. The air seemed to transform into viscous venom, and every breath carried a stinging pain that scraped the throat. The Warden, Magellan. Holy crap! Why is he here? Lin Yi was so scared his soul almost flew out. Any sense of accomplishment he had gained from the hospice care instantly vanished. He currently felt like a petty thief caught red-handed stealing fish from an orca pool. Don't panic. Get into that abandoned storage room on the right. Quick! Roger's voice exploded in his mind, his speech as fast as if it were on double speed. Lin Yi scrambled and tumbled, without a second thought. He dove headfirst into the storage room piled high with broken mops and rusty iron buckets, slamming the door shut with a click behind him. He pressed his entire body against the cold door panel, holding his breath. His heart pounded thump 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 so loudly he found it annoying himself. The storage room reeked of mildew and rust, choking him to the point he wanted to sneeze. He clamped his hand tightly over his mouth, forcibly suppressing the sneeze that was about to burst from his throat, making tears well up. He peered outward through a tiny crack in the door panel. The field of vision was pitifully narrow. He could only see a small patch of ice illuminated by dim light, and a pair of huge black leather boots slowly approaching. Thump, thump, thump. The heavy footsteps moved from far to near, and each step felt like it was stamping directly on his heart. The sound echoed across the empty ice field, carrying an undeniable majesty and a strange, clammy stickiness. Worse yet, a faint but nauseating smell of poison seeped in through the crack in the door, creeping in strands and aggressively occupying every inch of space in his nostrils. Lin Yi felt like his lungs were protesting, he was nearly suffocating. The footsteps stopped. They stopped right at the door of his storage room. A drop of cold sweat slid down the corner of Lin Yi's forehead, stinging his eye as it ran. In. Yet, he didn't dare even blink. He could even feel that terrifying gaze outside the door resting right on this thin wooden door. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. Strange. A low, hoarse voice, as if echoing from the depths of hell, sounded slowly. It seems, there's a rat scent. Lin Yi's heart almost leaped out of his throat. He was exposed? Discovered? All the muscles in his body instantly tensed, his mind went blank, leaving only 2 bloody words, "It's over." Just at this critical juncture. Voom. A faint, almost imperceptible, yet extremely penetrating wave of Conqueror's haki suddenly erupted from the phantom image of Roger beside Lin Yi. This haki did not alert Magellan outside the door, but instead acted like the most precise sniper bullet, crossing a distance of nearly 100 meters to accurately strike a fat rat gnawing on a corpse in another distant corridor. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The rat reacted as if struck by lightning, its fur standing on end. It let out a scream of utter terror and scrambled wildly in the dead silent corridor. Magellan outside the door seemed to have his attention drawn by the sound. "Humph, it is indeed a rat," he muttered, and the suffocating pressure that had been locked onto the door finally receded slowly. Lin Yi was just about to breathe a sigh of relief when he heard Magellan mumble again, his tone filled with annoyance and a hint of unspeakable urgency. "No time, it's that time again." Immediately following that, the heavy footsteps carrying the sticky sensation sounded again. This time, they moved hastily, without looking back, heading away toward a certain direction. Thud. Lin Yi collapsed onto the ground as if all the bones in his body had bin removed, gasping for breath, his chest heaving violently like a fish thrown onto the shore. His back was icy cold. He reached out to touch it and realized his neat guard uniform was completely soaked with cold sweat. Those few minutes just now were more heart-pounding than all the fights he had experienced in the past 10 years combined. It was a pure crushing force originating from a different level of life. You didn't even need to see the opponent make a move, just standing there, just his aura, just his footsteps, was enough to make all your will to resist turn into nothing. This was the strength of a top-tier expert. This was the terror of the Admiral level. He always thought that with his devil fruit ability and Roger's guidance, even if he couldn't win, escaping should never be a problem. But now he understood that in front of a true monster, even the thought of running was a luxury. Lin Yi rested for a good while before shaking off the lingering feeling of post-disaster exhaustion. He staggered to his feet, leaning against the wall, gritting his teeth. The panic and lingering fear in his eyes gradually faded, replaced by a fiercer determination born from humiliation. Damn it! I almost bought the farm. I'll remember this debt. He fiercely punched the wall, his voice carrying an unyielding stubbornness. When I get stronger, I'm definitely installing a voice-activated light in your toilet. It turns off as soon as you go in. It turns on as soon as you make a sound. I won't let you relieve yourself in peace. He pushed open the creaking storage room door. That faint smell of poison had not yet completely dissipated. And directly in front of him, the staircase leading to the deepest part of Impel Down, shrouded in ice, snow, and darkness, had already clearly appeared before his eyes. Infinite Hell, Level 6. Chapter 26, Opening a Blind Box, Golden Legend. Who. Lin Yi was slumped like a pile of mud at the staircase entrance leading to Level 6, his back pressed tightly against the cold stone wall, gasping for breath. The faint, lingering scent of poison seemed to still cling to his nasal cavity, making his lungs ache with every breath. Magellan. Just the sound of that guy's footsteps and his aura had almost sent him to his grave on the spot. I take back what I said. Lin Yi's voice was trembling slightly as he complained to Roger in his mind, "This place isn't a buffet, it's a damn black-hearted cafeteria. The main course eats people. Now you know fear?" Roger's voice carried a hint of mockery, but more so the calm of someone experienced. "This is just the beginning. What you're about to face is far more terrifying than a prison warden. Don't say any more, or I'll really back out." Lin Yi wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, feeling like he had used up a lifetime's worth of adrenaline in those few minutes. He steadied himself against the wall, shakily stood up, and cast his gaze down the bottomless, winding staircase. Compared to the upper levels, this place was terrifyingly quiet. No wailing, no roaring, not even the sound of wind. Dead silence. A suffocating dead silence, as if it could swallow all sound and light. "Let's go," Roger urged. "Magellan won't be back for a while. The real treasures are lying down there." As soon as he heard the word treasure, Lin Yi's heart, which had almost gone on strike, began to thump again. Yes, treasure. You can't catch a wolf without sacrificing a child, and you can't become a king without sacrificing your kidneys. He gritted his teeth, took a deep breath, and stepped into the profound darkness. Holy crap! As soon as he descended the stairs, the sight before him made him gasp and freeze on the spot. This was the infinite hell. The space was incredibly vast, like a hollowed-out mountain belly. Dim light filtered down from an unknown height, barely illuminating rows of massive cells, secured by thick iron chains and sea stone shackles. And those held within the cells. Lin Ye's pupils involuntarily dilated. To his left, a man several times larger than a giant race member was sleeping soundly against the wall, his snores like thunder, each breath causing the ice on the ground to tremble slightly. San Juan Wolf, the great battleship. To his right, a provocatively dressed woman with a seductive expression still wore a strange smile on her lips. Katarina Devon, the Crescent Moon Hunter. Further ahead, the one holding a sake gourd, dead drunk, was Vasco Shot, the heavy drinker. And Avalo Pizarro, the corrupt king. This. Lin Ye's teeth were chattering, whether from cold or excitement. This is the future all-star lineup of the Blackbeard Pirates. They're alive. All of them are alive. He felt like an otaku who had accidentally wandered backstage at a convention, surrounded by top-tier cosplayers he'd only ever seen in manga, and they were all real people. This feeling was so damn exhilarating. He cautiously moved between these enormous cells, feeling like a thief exploring a figurine museum, every step filled with trepidation, yet unable to stop his eyes from gleaming. Each collection here exuded a faint yet overwhelmingly domineering aura. They were clearly locked, even frozen, but the ferocity and power emanating from their very bones still sent shivers down one's spine. Don't act like Granny Lou entering the Grand View Garden, it's embarrassing. Roger's voice sounded at the right time, cooling down his overly excited brain. These guys are strong, but they're not our target this time. They're all full of vigor. Disturbing them now would be like poking a hornet's nest. Understood. Lin Yi nodded repeatedly, forcing his gaze away from those limited edition figurines. We're here this time to, provide targeted assistance, right? Follow me. Guided by Roger, Lin Yi twisted and turned, arriving at the most secluded corner of infinite hell. It's him. Roger's tone, for the first time, carried a hint of solemnity. Lin Yi leaned closer, peering through the frost-covered bars into the cell. Deep inside the cell, an emaciated old man was frozen within a massive block of ice, utterly devoid of any signs of life. If not for his eyes. What kind of eyes were those? His body was clearly at its limit of decay, yet in those eyes, a furious, unwilling, almost world-consuming flame of madness burned. Burndy World, the World Destroyer. Roger slowly spoke his name. The Momo Fruit ability user. This guy is a pure madman, and an undeniable genius. Lin Ye's heart pounded. It was him. One of his primary targets for infiltrating Impel Down this time. He's almost gone. Roger's voice was heavy. His bodily functions are almost completely exhausted, and his life force is rapidly draining like a punctured balloon. But his soul, because of that indomitable will, still maintains astonishing, vast energy. Excellent. Lin Ye's eyes glowed green with greed. Just seize him, then take him back and slowly nurture him. No. Roger interrupted him. You now have two choices. Lin Yi was startled, huh? First, conventional detainment, take him back and slowly nurture him. Roger's phantom solidified beside him, his expression serious. This is the safest method, zero risk. Second. He paused, his voice dropping even lower, here, now, immediately, directly refine his soul. What? Lin Yi cried out, then quickly covered his mouth, lowering his voice. Are you crazy? Refining him here? What if the commotion is too big and draws Magellan back? The risk is immense, but the reward is also the greatest. Roger's gaze was sharp as a knife, piercing Lin Yi's heart. His soul contains the purest, most stubborn indomitable will. This will, for you right now, is a great tonic. Perhaps, it can stimulate you, allowing you to touch the threshold early. Only then will you have the qualifications to stand before those guys. That threshold? Lin Yi instantly understood Roger's meaning. His breathing quickened involuntarily. His gaze once again fell upon the dying old man in the cell. Their eyes met. From those burning eyes, Lin Yi saw the unwillingness and the deepest hatred for this world. He remembered earlier. He remembered Magellan's oppressive presence, like a god descending, and the humiliation of hiding in the storage room like a rat, not daring to even breathe loudly. Weak. Still too weak. In front of true top-tier powerhouses, he was still vulnerable. A surge of reckless ambition suddenly flared from the bottom of his heart. Hesitate? To hell with hesitation. Has he gotten to where he is today by playing it safe? No. He got here by being audacious. Let's do it. Lin Yi gritted his teeth, his eyes instantly becoming incredibly resolute, that ruthless streak returning. Fortune favors the bold. Others have to save up for a 10-pull, but today, right here in infinite hell, I'm going for a single-pull miracle. He bared his white teeth, a hint of madness in his smile. Today, I'm going to open a golden legend. With that, he no longer hesitated, extending his trembling yet firm right hand and pressing it onto the bone-chilling, stone-patterned bars of the cell. 10,000 Souls banner, open. Chapter 27, No More Fighting When Arguing. He concentrated all his mental energy and activated his devil fruit ability. A faint black banner shadow, like an invisible giant hand, instantly pierced through the bars and precisely enveloped Burndy World's soul, which was about to dissipate yet was still incredibly powerful. Refinement, begin. The next second, boom. A terrifying torrent of energy, far exceeding any previous refinement, mixed with Burndy World's lifelong battle memories of dominating the seas, his insane desire for destruction, and his stubborn will to never yield even in death, surged into Lin Ye's body like a bursting dam. Ugh! Lin Ye's eyes suddenly widened, and his whites were instantly filled with countless bloodshot veins. His vision went black, and his entire brain felt as if a detonating bomb had been stuffed inside it. He couldn't hold on. He was going to burst. Ugh! It hurt. It wasn't the pain of flesh, nor the agony of broken bones. It was the excruciating pain of a soul being forcibly torn apart, then stirred into a pulp with 10,000 red-hot steel needles. Burndy World's insane will, which had dominated the seas his entire life, mixed with a destructive desire that could shatter the heavens and earth, brutally charged into his small spiritual world like an out-of-control train loaded with explosives. Rumble. Inside his head, he could hear nothing but an endless roar. Every bone in his body groaned under the unbearable pressure, as if it would shatter inch by inch the next second from the immense energy. On the surface of his skin, veins bulged like twisted earthworms, and his entire body swelled by a full circle, appearing hideous and terrifying. He couldn't hold on. He was really going to burst. His consciousness was rapidly being swallowed and assimilated by that violent will. Before his eyes, scenes of memories that weren't his own began to flash, the madness of shelling Marineford with the San Juan wolf, the monstrous hatred of being betrayed by the world government, and the stubbornness and arrogance of never bowing down until death. I am Lin Yi. He gritted his teeth, biting his tongue until it broke, the bloody taste in his mouth barely allowing him to maintain the last shred of clarity. No, he was going to be possessed by this old madman's will. Just a second before his mental defenses completely collapsed and his entire being was about to be torn to shreds by this energy buzz. Inside the 10,000 Souls banner's internal space, the second soul, which had been quietly dividing in the corner and seemed unremarkable after its capture but had a special attraction to Hockey, suddenly, without warning, erupted with dazzling golden light. The light was gentle, yet it carried an innate, unquestionable majesty. It was like a super magnet thrown into a raging ocean of energy. The torrent of energy that had been rampaging through Lin Ye's body, threatening to tear him apart, seemed to find an outlet, or like a subject meeting a monarch, instantly became docile, frantically and actively converging towards that golden light. That golden royal soul was like the most precise energy processor, frantically absorbing Burndy World's violent, impure will, and then, filtering, purifying, and regenerating it. It stripped away the madness and chaos, leaving only the purest, most core essence, indomitable. With this king's aptitude as a guide, and Burndy world's indomitable will as fuel, Lin Ye's spiritual world underwent an earth-shattering transformation. It was as if a seed had quietly broken through the soil in the deepest part of his soul. Then, boom! An invisible, silent, yet utterly domineering aura, centered on his cross-legged body, suddenly exploded like a transparent shockwave. Wherever that aura passed in the surrounding cells, those legendary prisoners who were still barely clinging to life and consciousness didn't even have time to groan before their eyes rolled back, and they collectively fainted instantly. In the more distant cells, the prisoners hanging by chains, emitting faint moans, their voices abruptly ceased, as if a mute button had been pressed, and they all tilted their heads, completely unconscious. Even the other 4 members of the Elite Five, who were waiting in the 10,000 Souls banner's internal space, felt their bodies go limp from this sudden, terrifying, kingly pressure, and they all rolled their eyes, falling straight down like 4 wooden stakes with their power cords pulled. The entire infinite hell, in this brief instant, fell into an unprecedented, absolute dead silence. Lin Yi suddenly opened his eyes. The world felt different in his perception. He could see the dust flowing in the air, hear the sound of water droplets condensing under the distant ice, and even more, feel the faint candle in the wind life force of every living being. Everything became incredibly clear, incredibly minuscule. It was as if the entire world bowed down to his will. Not bad, you finally look like a true powerhouse. Roger's voice, carrying a hint of relief and teasing, echoed in his mind. Congratulations, you've awakened Houshaku Haki. From now on, when you argue with people, you won't have to use your hands anymore. Just stare at them, and you're done. Lin Yi slowly lowered his head, looking at his slightly trembling hands. Within him, the energy that had once been so violent it threatened to tear him apart was now completely tamed, flowing steadily like a surging river through his meridians, which had widened several times over. And a brand new, invisible aura naturally emanated from him, giving him the illusion that I am the center of the world. Is this the aptitude of a king? He murmured to himself, then, his lips uncontrollably, wildly curved upwards, finally breaking into a joyous, triumphant laugh. The feeling is absolutely amazing. He suddenly leaped up from the ground, an unprecedented sense of power filling his limbs and bones. His strength, at this moment, had undergone a qualitative leap. He officially held the entry ticket to the table of top powerhouses. Chapter 28, Friendly Negotiation, please enter the banner. So exhilarating. It was a brand new feeling, the sensation of reigning supreme over the world. In his perception, the entire world seemed to have shed its blurry outer shell, revealing the clearest, most fundamental core. He could hear the crisp sound of water droplets melting from the distant ice wall, he could see the trajectory of every speck of dust fluttering in the dim light of the air, and he could even feel the faint, almost negligible flame of life within every living being in this infinite hell, like a candle in the wind. And he himself was the only sun in this dark world. Is this the qualification of a king? He slowly opened his palm, feeling the powerful and unrestrained new strength within his body, the corner of his mouth uncontrollably and crazily curving upwards, finally turning into an irrepressible, maniacal laugh. Now he understood why when Red Hair just stepped onto Whitebird's ship, it caused the hull to crack and the crew to faint. That wasn't deliberate showing off. That was a natural crushing of life levels. Woo woo woo. Just as he was immersed in this new sense of power, almost ready to strike a JoJo pose to celebrate, a harsh, intermittent alarm sound faintly drifted down from above the infinite hell. The invisible shockwave caused by the Conqueror's Haki eruption had clearly alerted something. From the distant stairs, several furious roars belonging to the guards and the sound of chaotic footsteps seemed to be approaching. Stop gloating. Roger's voice instantly turned serious, like a basin of cold water extinguishing the arrogance that had just ignited in him. The guards will definitely come down to investigate after discovering the prisoners are collectively unconscious. We don't have much time. Hurry up. Let's invite the remaining old friends in as well. The maniacal laughter on Lin Ye's face vanished, and his eyes instantly sharpened. He took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the urge of his newly acquired power to announce to the whole world how awesome he was, and retracted the kingly aura of the conqueror's haki back into his body. Understood. He nodded, his gaze sharp as lightning, sweeping across this legendary figurine collection room. Now was not the time to celebrate. It was time for friendly negotiation to expand the collection. His first target was clear and direct. Lin Yi took a step and walked straight toward another secluded corner. In the cell there, a man wearing a red suit and a black eye patch sat quietly in the shadows of the corner. He was equally emaciated and bound by sea stone chains, but unlike the outwardly mad Burndy world, this man exuded a deep-seated solitude and arrogance, as if he were not a prisoner but a king temporarily resting there. The solitary Red, Patrick Redfield. A legendary great pirate who was once on par with Whitebeard and Golden Lion, capable of contending with them single-handedly. Lin Yi walked up to the cell without unnecessary words. He just looked quietly at the other man, then slowly and precisely enveloped him with the conqueror's haki he had just awakened, still a bit clumsy, but certainly intimidating enough, like an invisible large net. This haki was mixed with a trace of the kingly aura that once made the sea tremble, belonging to Roger. In the cell, Redfield's eyelids, which had been tightly shut as if indifferent to everything in the world, suddenly trembled once. He slowly and extremely laboriously raised his head. A flicker of astonishment, a trace of confusion, and finally, a complex understanding flashed in his one eye. He heard the thoughts of the person opposite him. And he saw it too. Within that newborn yet overwhelmingly domineering conqueror's haki, he smelled a scent both familiar and strange. It was Roger's scent. Old Senior. Lin Yi spoke, his voice not loud, but steady and powerful, clearly reaching the other's ears in the deathly silent cell. Outside, it is now an era called the Great Pirate Era. To be honest, it's much livelier than when you were causing trouble back then. He paused, his tone carrying an irrefutable dominance. Will you choose to rot and stink here like a piece of rotten meat, forgotten by the world? Or will you choose another way, follow me, and go out to see that more splendid era you never witnessed? Redfield did not speak. He just looked deeply, deeply into Lin Yi with his one eye. That gaze seemed to pierce through Lin Yi's skin, seeing the essence deep within his soul. Lin Yi met his gaze calmly, without retreating in the slightest. After a long while, Redfield's withered face seemed to twitch, as if he were smiling, or perhaps mocking himself. Then, he slowly closed his eyes. The next second, a wisp of soul, so solid it was almost materialized, carrying an aura of solitude and arrogance, actively and calmly floated out of his decaying body. There was no resistance, no struggle. This was the final dignity and choice belonging to a strong man. Lin Yi raised his hand, and the phantom of the 10,000 souls banner flashed by, easily collecting this legendary soul into the banner. Done. A combat power of at least admiral level once recovered is secured. Lin Yi was ecstatic in his heart. Without drawing a single sword. High-level business warfare often only requires the simplest method of negotiation. Let's go, next one. He didn't delay at all, turning and walking toward another direction. That was where the devil's descendant was imprisoned. However, as he looked over, the smile on his face instantly froze. In that deepest, darkest cell, a man whose body was bound like a zongzi with sea stone chains, yet whose physique remained as powerful as a prehistoric fierce beast, had opened his eyes at some unknown time. What kind of eyes were those? No madness, no confusion, only pure, beast-like coldness and violence. He just sat there quietly, his eyes piercing through the darkness, piercing through the distance, staring fixedly, at Lin Yi. Chapter 29, You Want to Surpass Me? Come into my bowl first. In that deepest, darkest cell, a man, bound like a zongzi by sea stone chains, yet still as robust as a prehistoric beast, had opened his eyes at some unknown moment. What kind of eyes were those? There was no madness, no chaos, only pure, beast-like coldness and brutality. He sat there silently, his eyes piercing through the darkness, through the distance, staring intently, at Lin Yi. The air, at this moment, seemed to solidify into iron. Lin Yi's triumphant smile, born of a great harvest, was instantly frozen by absolute zero, minus 273 degrees Celsius, stuck at the corners of his mouth. He felt like he wasn't being stared at by a person. Instead, he was being targeted as the sole prey by a top predator that had awakened from ancient glaciers and been hungry for 100,000 years. Every inch of his skin was stinging. Every pore was screaming danger. The devil's descendant, Douglas Bullet. This man, just by sitting there, just by looking at him with his eyes, was enough to make Lin Yi, who had just awakened his Haoshiku, feel a shiver rising from the depths of his soul. "Rookie, don't chicken out." Roger's voice echoed in his mind, as calm as ever, yet with a hint of imperceptible gravity. "You're a person with King's Haki now, show some of that prestige you had earlier." "It's easy for you to say." Lin Yi roared frantically in his heart. "This is completely different from those old geezers with low HP earlier. That look, it feels like he could swallow me whole." Despite being panicked, Lin Yi forced out a smile on his face that was uglier than crying, yet he believed it to be full of provocation. He knew that facing such a pure believer in strength, any hint of timidity would lead to utter defeat. He took a step, then another, actively walking towards the cell that exuded an aura of death. With each step, the pressure in the air intensified. When he reached 3 meters in front of the cell, Lin Yi felt as if he was walking with a mountain on his back, and even breathing became incredibly heavy. "You have." A hoarse, deep voice, like rusted iron scraping against each other, slowly emerged from the dark depths of the cell. "Roger's scent." Lin Yi's heart suddenly constricted. "Here it comes." He forcibly suppressed the urge to turn and run, grinned, and smiled like a complete scoundrel. "Good eyes, big guy." Instead of retreating, he took another step forward, almost pressing against the cell bars, and said in an extremely provocative tone, "That's right, your old captain is now my teacher." He extended his thumb, pointing arrogantly at himself. "He asked me to ask you, isn't it boring sitting here molding by yourself? Do you want to fight him again?" Boom! A visible, utterly violent fighting spirit erupted from Bullet like a volcanic explosion. His muscles, bound by sea stone chains and forged like steel, instantly flexed. Crackling! Those chains, thicker than a man's waist, were stretched taut by this terrifying force, groaning under the strain. The entire infinite hell seemed to shake violently due to his sudden emotional outburst. In Bullet's cold eyes, burning flames finally ignited. He stared intently at Lin Yi, every word seemingly squeezed through his teeth. "Just, you?" That palpable sense of oppression surged forward like a tsunami, almost crushing Lin Yi on the spot. This was a clash of pure wills. Bullet only wanted to surpass the man who once stood before him. And Lin Yi wanted to turn this strongest beast into the brightest one in his collection. Just as the tension was high, ready to explode. "Bullet." A calm, tranquil voice, yet imbued with an aura unique to the Pirate King that seemed capable of stilling time itself, slowly sounded beside Lin Yi. The air around Lin Yi subtly distorted. Roger's translucent soul phantom quietly materialized, arms crossed, standing there calmly. He didn't release any haki, nor did his expression show any ripple. But the moment he appeared, Bullet's violent aura, powerful enough to shake the entire impel down, was abruptly choked off as if by an invisible hand, coming to a sudden halt. His massive body trembled. His flaming eyes stared intently, disbelievingly, at Roger's phantom. "Ro. Gor." The name, when it left his mouth, was no longer a hoarse roar, but rather carried a hint of childlike confusion and tremor. "Your power should not decay here." Roger spoke indifferently, his gaze calmly falling upon his former crewmate. His eyes held no sympathy, no pity, only an equal assessment, one strong person observing another. He paused, then uttered words capable of shattering all of Bullet's psychological defenses. "Want to surpass me? You can. Come join our team. I'll give you that opportunity." These words, like a bolt of creation lightning, fiercely struck into Bullet's desolate inner world, which was filled with the obsession of surpassing Roger. What he craved was never freedom. What he craved was a battle with the strongest, and to surpass him. Now, the goal he had pursued his entire life, the man he thought had long vanished, stood before him, personally offering him an irresistible invitation. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Bullet first laughed softly, then unrestrainedly, and finally, he threw his head back and laughed wildly. His laughter was filled with unwillingness, ecstasy, and a sense of relief from finally finding a new goal. The entire infinite hell trembled violently amidst his deafening laughter. Good. He suddenly raised his head, and in his eyes, the frenzied fighting spirit reignited, no longer directed at Lin Yi, but at Roger's phantom. Good. Roger. I'll see if this kid you chose really has the qualifications to bear my power. As soon as his words fell, he actually, actively, completely, released all his mental defenses. That gate leading to the depths of his soul opened wide towards Lin Yi with a crash. Lin Yi's heart filled with wild joy, and without the slightest hesitation, he activated the 10,000 Souls banner. The dark banner's shadow instantly enveloped Bullet. The next second, a soul even more domineering than Redfield's, and more violent than Burndy World's, was forcibly dragged out from Bullet's body, like a black sun. The moment the soul was confined within the 10,000 Souls banner, surpass Roger. Surpass Roger. Surpass Roger. An obsession so powerful it was twisted, so pure it was extreme, echoed wildly like a mental storm within the entire internal space of the 10,000 Souls banner. This obsession even formed an independent willfield, making the souls of Redfield and other great pirate powerhouses, who had just been subdued within the banner, feel an instinctive unease and restlessness. Lin Yi even felt his head being violently struck by this thought, a moment of trepidation. This guy. Roger looked at the restless black sun within the 10,000 Souls banner, and slowly spoke, his tone complex. His obsession is a double-edged sword. Used well, it's an unstoppable drive; used poorly, it's a bomb that could explode at any moment. Lin Yi was about to say something to express his joy at acquiring a top-tier fighter. Rumble. Chapter 30, Impel Down? No, it's a buffet, grab and go. Rumble. A dull, earth-shattering roar, as if some prehistoric giant beast were smashing its head against a wall, reverberated fiercely down from the very top floor of the infinite hell. Immediately following, the entire Impel Down shook violently and crazily, as if a massive boulder had been dropped into a pond. Woo woo woo. A sharp, grating, sky-piercing, top-level alarm instantly tore through the dead silence of this underwater prison. The sound was so shrill it felt like it was stabbing through one's eardrums. Countless red warning lights flashed frantically, illuminating the sinister corridors like rivers of blood flowing from hell. Intruder attack. Intruder attack. There is an invader. Level 6 is in revolt. All personnel immediately assemble at level 6. Repeat. All personnel immediately assemble at level 6. The chaotic sound of footsteps, enraged roars, the metallic scrape of weapons being drawn, countless sounds mixed together, converging into a torrent called chaos, surging wildly from all directions toward Lin Yi's location. Exposed. Completely and utterly exposed. TCH. Lin Yi stood in the center of the devastated infinite hell. Hearing the tide-like footsteps growing closer above him, he felt not the slightest bit of tension, but rather. He clicked his tongue in annoyance, a look of extreme displeasure crossing his face. So damn noisy. He looked up. The restraint and caution he displayed while in disguise were completely gone from his eyes, replaced instead by an arrogance bordering on the reckless, looking down on everything. Forget it. He stretched his wrists, his knuckles cracking in a series of crisp sounds. Since I've been discovered. Then there's no point in pretending anymore. The corner of his mouth curled up, revealing a pale, beast-like grin. Old Luo, lead the way. Roger that. Roger's leisurely voice sounded in his mind, carrying a hint of amusement at the impending spectacle. Keep up, I'll show you a shortcut and let you avoid that mad dog spewing poison everywhere. Got it. Lin Yi stomped his feet hard, and his body shot upward like a cannonball, charging directly against the chaotic torrent towards the levels above. He stopped hiding, stopped sneaking. He swaggered openly, straight toward the mandatory path leading to level 5, which was packed with guards. Stop right there. Don't move. Invader. Hands up. As soon as he rushed onto a platform, he was met head-on by an elite force composed of at least 300 guards. They held long spears, wore armor, and maintained a strict formation, blocking the entire passage solid. Leading them was a tall guard captain with a face full of coarse flesh. He looked at the lone Lin Yi with eyes so fierce they seemed ready to devour a man. Surrender immediately. Otherwise, you will be killed without question. The guard captain roared in anger. Behind him, several hundred guards took a synchronized step forward. That iron-blooded, murderous aura was enough to make the legs of any pirate with a bounty over 100 million turn to jelly. However, Lin Yi just stopped. He didn't even draw his weapon, just stood lazily in place, hands shoved in his pockets, tilting his head as he sized up the arrayed enemies with the look one gives an idiot. Then, he raised his eyelids. His pitch-black eyes glanced coldly, devoid of any emotion, at the guard captain who was shouting the loudest. Just one glance. The next second, an invisible, domineering, world-ruling aura violently swept through the entire passage, radiating from Lin Yi like a shockwave from a nuclear explosion. Time seemed to have been pressed into mute at this moment. No sound. No screams. Only thud. 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 Like dumplings being dropped. The 100 or so elite guards at the very front still had expressions frozen in ferocity, but their eyes suddenly rolled up, foam appeared at their mouths, and the long spears in their hands clattered to the ground. Every single one of them fell backward silently and stiffly. 1, 2, 10, 100. Guards fell in swaths, like wheat being cut down, silently collapsing until the ground was instantly covered. And the leading, arrogant guard captain, his body seemed to be crushed by an invisible, massive mountain. Ugh! A painful groan escaped his throat. His legs went weak, and with a thump, he involuntarily knelt on the ground. He trembled as if shaking a sieve, cold sweat instantly soaking his back, his face etched with unprecedented, extreme horror and fear. He stared fixedly at the man slowly walking toward him, his teeth chattering. Who exactly are you? Lin Yi didn't even acknowledge him. He couldn't even be bothered to spare another second of his gaze for the kneeling guard captain. He swaggered past the guard captain with a leisurely stride. He was even humming a cheerful, off-key little tune under his breath. His song was flippant, his steps relaxed. Behind him, where he had passed, lay a ground covered in guards with rolled-up eyes and foaming mouths. At this moment, he was like a ghost, moving through empty territory. Along the way, the alarm remained grating, and countless guards surged from all directions, but before he even got close, they fell down in droves as if they had seen a ghost. He continued humming his song, moving upward amidst the horrified gazes of countless guards. Left side, detour. Magellan just spat out a blast of poison dragon phlegm. Right turn ahead, the monitoring transponder snail there was just stunned by the shockwave. Under Roger's precise voice navigation, Lin Yi perfectly avoided the impel-down warden who was currently enraged and spraying venom everywhere, finally reaching the ground floor completely unharmed. Boom! He kicked open the gate leading to the dock, and the blinding sunlight instantly poured in. I'm out, damn it. Lin Yi had only just started feeling happy. A lewd voice, tinged with a hint of teasing, sounded beside his ear. Kawaii any little brother, could you perhaps tell me what happened inside? Chapter 31, The Slacker Admiral Arrives. Whoa there little bro, mind telling me what's going on in there? The voice was lazy, drawn out, like a cat yawning, yet it sent a chill down one's spine. Lin Yi had just rushed out of the dark impel down, his eyes still adjusting to the blinding sunlight, when the voice whispered into his ear like a ghost. His heart skipped a beat, and his hair stood on end. There was no time to think. A primal fear, as if stalked by an apex predator, made him instinctively reach for his sword and step back. Too late. A golden light, faster than his thoughts, flashed in the corner of his eye. The light was dazzling, like a fragment of the sun, carrying a terrifying force that could shatter a mountain. Shit! Lin Yi only had time to curse before crossing his arms, his black armament haki instantly hardening to shield his face. Bang! A deep, resonant boom. Lin Yi felt like he had been hit not by a kick, but by a high-speed sea train. The brutal force tore through his defense and slammed into his arms. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking was clear. He was sent flying like a rag doll, his feet leaving the ground, and slammed into the hard outer wall of Impel Down, creating a web of cracks and sending debris flying. Lin Yi was embedded in the wall like an abstract mural, sliding down after a moment, coughing up blood-tinged saliva. He shook his nearly numb, rapidly healing right arm, gritting his teeth as he looked up. In the sunlight, a tall man in a yellow and white striped suit stood with his hands in his pockets, head slightly tilted, wearing that trademark sleazy smile, looking at him with interest. The strongest force of Marine Headquarters, Admiral Kizaru Borsellino. No wonder you're the fastest man in the Marine, Alogia, Pika Pika no Mi user. Lin Yi leaned against the wall, standing up unsteadily, rubbing his numb, aching chest, but forcing a provocative smile. You got here fast, that lightspeed kick packs quite a punch. Kizaru shrugged, his voice still lazy. Am I taking a kick from me and not falling apart? Kids these days are built tough, thanks. Lin Yi roared, stomping the ground, which instantly shattered. He wasted no more words, his newly awakened conqueror's haki surging like an invisible storm, pure killing intent sweeping towards Kizaru. Simultaneously, his blade, coated in a layer of black armament haki, struck like a bolt of black lightning towards Kizaru's face. Facing this terrifying aura that would make a vice admiral tremble, Kizaru's expression remained unchanged. He lazily raised a hand, his fingertip glinting with gold light. Clang! A dazzling sword made entirely of light particles appeared in his hand. Aim no habakiri. Clang 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 clang. The next second, the first floor of Impel Down turned into a storm of light. Black blade glints and golden sword shadows clashed wildly, sending countless tiny beams of light scattering like rain, leaving deep holes in the surrounding ground and walls. Kizaru looked as relaxed as if he were on a stroll in the park. He even had time to yawn, his aim no habakiri moving flawlessly, each block perfectly deflecting Lin Yi's furious attacks. Lin Yi, however, grew more alarmed the longer they fought. His strength, enhanced by countless Sea King souls, was already monstrous, but each strike on Kizaru's lightsword felt like hacking at cotton, his power dispersing. Kizaru's speed was also insanely fast. Several times he thought he had landed a hit, only to strike a mere afterimage. This was an admiral. A virtually flawless, six-sided warrior. Little bro, your power is weird, Kizaru casually parried while chatting. It's even more monstrous than a giant's strength, your speed is the real monster. Lin Yi gritted his teeth, attacking even more fiercely. Just as the two were locked in intense combat, their sword auras and light beams churning the hall into chaos, a sly curve appeared at the corner of Kizaru's mouth. His body, still engaged with Lin Yi, suddenly flashed with light, and a clone identical to him silently emerged from his back, taking a eerie arc to strike at Lin Yi's back with a finger glowing with blinding gold light. This move was silent and lightning fast. Lin Yi's observation haki sensed the danger, but his body was pinned by Kizaru's main form, unable to defend in time. Just as the deadly light beam was about to hit at this critical moment, a hearty, majestic voice, like the roar of the sea, suddenly echoed through the battlefield. God's repulsion. Boom. A visible slash wrapped in black-red conqueror's haki lightning struck from nowhere, like the wrath of a god, surpassing the speed of light, striking the clone with devastating force. There was no explosion, no loud noise. Kizaru's clone, capable of a fatal sneak attack, silently disintegrated under the overwhelming strike. For the first time, Kizaru's lazy expression vanished. He abruptly stopped his attack. Flashing to a distance, his eyes instantly serious as he stared at Lin Yi's side. There, the air shimmered. A spectral figure of a man in a captain's red coat and cloak, with a distinctive goatee, silently materialized, standing calmly with a raised blade and a composed smile. When he appeared, an unparalleled, imperial aura enveloped all of Impel Down. It was an aura that commanded even the sea's submission. A bead of sweat trickled down Kizaru's temple. His usually half-closed eyes were now wide with shock and disbelief. Pirate King. Gold Roger. His voice was sharp with shock. No way. Is this the Pirate King Roger? Roger looked at Kizaru's ghost-seeing expression and let out his signature hearty laugh. Ha 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 ha. Borsalino. Long time no see, you're still as sleazy as ever. He pointed at Lin Yi, his voice protective. Don't go sneaking up on my captain. Captain? Kizaru felt his brain was about to short-circuit. Amidst this frozen atmosphere, an even angrier, more violent roar echoed from within Impel Down. Intruders! Boom! A massive figure, covered in purple poison, burst through the wall. Impel Down Warden, Magellan. He immediately saw the chaos and the spectral figure of the Pirate King. Magellan's pupils contracted in shock. But as the warden, he quickly replaced shock with burning rage. Ignoring Roger, he locked his fiery gaze onto Lin Yi, the cause of this chaos. Poison Dragon! Magellan opened his mouth, unleashing 3 writhing purple dragons of corrosive poison, their foul stench filling the air as they lunged at Lin Yi. Lin Yi saw the poisonous attack and his scalp tingled. Damn! Without thinking, he sent several sharp blade auras, whoosh whoosh whoosh, slicing the poison dragons to pieces. Purple poison splattered, sizzling, and corroding the ground, emitting a foul, sewer-like stench. Lin Yi quickly covered his mouth and nose, nearly vomiting. Hey! Magellan! Did you just come out of the toilet? This stinks. Magellan ignored the taunts, spreading his arms to unleash more poison dragons and bombs, relentlessly attacking Lin Yi. Lin Yi had no chance to counter, dodging and weaving through the poison, cursing all the while, a pitiful sight. Meanwhile, Kizaru, recovering from his initial shock, coldly faced the legend before him, his eyes sharper than ever behind his glasses. Pirate King Roger. You're a relic of a bygone era, why come back? Ha 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 ha. Roger laughed heartily, to make waves, of course. To shake up this world ruled by your world government. Before he finished, Kizaru's figure turned into a beam of light, his aim no habakiri striking with devastating force at Roger. Roger merely grinned, meeting the attack head-on with his supreme-grade blade, Ace, wrapped in black-red lightning. Clang! This clash was 100 times more terrifying than Lin Yi and Kizaru's battle. A shockwave blasted out from their center, ripping up the entire first floor of Impel Down. Kizaru couldn't slack off anymore. The pressure was now all on him. He circled Roger, pushing his speed to the limit, using moves like Yasukani no Magatama and Yata no Kagami, seamlessly unleashing devastating light attacks, golden light bombs raining down like meteors. Roger, however, casually walked through the storm of light, each strike imbued with his conqueror's haki, effortlessly blocking every attack and even countering, shattering the light. This legendary battle shook all of Impel Down. In a corner of this godly battle, Lin Yi was chased by ever larger purple poison dragons, cursing all the while. Damn it! Magellan! Stop spraying poison! Have some decency! Chapter 32, Can't win? Then call for backup. Damn it, is this thing endless? Lin Yi executed a clumsy donkey roll, narrowly dodging a purple poison dragon lunging at him. The thing brushed past his nose, hitting the wall behind him with a boom, corroding a sizzling large hole that emitted thick smoke smelling of sulfur mixed with the ultimate stench of the sewers, enough to instantly knock a person unconscious. He currently felt like he wasn't fighting someone, but playing hide-and-seek with a recently exploded septic tank in an enclosed space. It was utterly disgusting. Intruder! You will not leave here alive today. Magellan's already gloomy face turned so dark it looked like it could drip water. He spread his arms, and more venom gathered and churned behind him, with 3 to 5 more poison dragons faintly taking shape. On the other side, the battlefield between Roger and Kizaru was even more exaggerated. Golden light and dark red Haushiku lightning collided fiercely, turning the entire main hall of Impel Down into a pot of boiling light porridge. Lasers and slashes scattered everywhere, leaving the walls and floor riddled with dense holes, looking worse than honeycomb briquettes. Roger, however, seemed to be handling it with ease. His swordsmanship was broad and unrestrained, every strike forced Kizaru to deal with it with his full power. But Kizaru, that old slickster, was as slippery as a loach. Relying on his lightspeed advantage, he simply refused to clash head-on, constantly muttering, "Oh my, how frightening, the Pirate King is truly a monster." Lin Yi's eyelids twitched watching this. He couldn't drag this out any longer. Who knew when reinforcements from Marineford would arrive? If Sengoku and Garp, those old monsters, showed up, none of them, Lin Yi and his group, would escape this alive. It was time to call for reinforcements. Can't win? Then call for backup. Lin Yi grinned, a smile carrying a touch of madness and undisguised triumph. He stomped hard, leaping high out of the venomous encirclement, and the phantom of the 10,000 souls banner flashed behind him. "Come out and greet the guests, my two old brothers." He roared loudly, "Bullet! Redfield! Swish! Swish!" As his voice fell, two terrifying figures, so powerful they made the air solidify, appeared out of thin air. On his left and right. One wore a red suit, held a red parasol, possessed aloof eyes, and carried an elegant demeanor, looking less like he was here to fight and more like he was attending an afternoon tea party. The other was built as robustly as a prehistoric beast, his muscles knotted like ropes. Just standing there, the pure, unreasonable aura of brutality made the surrounding temperature drop several degrees. The solitary red, Patrick Redfield. Devil's descendant, Douglas Bullet. Magellan, who was furiously outputting venom, had his pupils instantly shrink to pinpricks. On his dark face, an expression mixed with horror and disbelief appeared once more. Aren't they supposed to be in the cells of level 6? This is Souls? He stared fixedly at the two figures, which were so solid they were almost tangible, his voice distorted by extreme shock. "Damn intruder! What did you do to them?" "What did I do?" Lin Yi rubbed his buzzing ears, smiling like a complete villain. "Nothing much, just invited them out to retire somewhere else." He couldn't be bothered to waste more words, waving his hand with an air of commanding the world. "Ride, go help old Luo finish this quickly and pin down that glowing perverted uncle for me. Bullet! This poison user is yours. Beat him to death for me." Patrick Redfield offered no extra words, merely nodding slightly. His figure flickered, and he transformed into a red afterimage, carrying his seemingly elegant parasol, silently cutting into the battlefield between Roger and Kizaru. His speed was incredibly fast. He could even precisely predict Kizaru's landing spot during the gaps in the lightspeed movement, using the tip of his umbrella to interfere. Meanwhile, Bullet on the other side shot Lin Yi an arrogant glance, then glanced at Roger, who was currently pressing Kizaru, letting out a disdainful cold snort from his nose. In the end, he moved. He had no weapon, because he himself was the most terrifying weapon. Boom! A dense, visible purple armament hockey, like boiling magma, instantly covered his entire body. Facing the poison dragon roaring towards him again from Magellan, Bullet didn't even bother dodging. He simply threw a punch straight into the dragon. That punch had no flashy techniques. Only pure, ultimate power and hockey capable of shattering everything. Put! The highly toxic dragon, capable of corroding steel, was like a fragile bubble the moment it touched Bullet's purplish-black fist. It couldn't last even a second before being instantly blown apart by that brutal force. Purple venom splattered everywhere, but it couldn't even penetrate the defense layer of Bullet's hockey, evaporating completely. One punch. One kick. Magellan's proud poison dragon attack was as fragile as a child's toy in front of Bullet, easily neutralized without causing any harm. What? What kind of powerful armament hockey is this? Magellan's heart shook violently. And on Kizaru's side, the battle took a sharp downturn. Under Ride's elusive speed entanglement, Kizaru's proud mobility was completely suppressed. For the first time, he felt like his movements were a bit too slow. That was the opening. Ha 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 ha. Got you, Borsellino. Roger's hearty laughter sounded like a death sentence. He seized the moment of stiffness when Kizaru was forced back by Ride. The sword in his hand, Ace, was enveloped in an unprecedented, extremely dense dark red Haushiku lightning. God's repulsion. One slash. A simple yet overwhelmingly dominant slash. Put. The golden light was forcibly split open. A string of blinding fresh blood shot out into the air like a blooming rose. Kazara's face, usually adorned with a lewd smile, showed an expression interwoven with pain and terror for the first time. He felt like his shoulder had been hit head-on by a mountain, his bones felt fractured. Hit. I was hit. In agony, he dared not linger in the fight. His body instantly turned into a beam of light. Retreating miserably backward, creating a distance of over 100 meters. Finally, he knelt on one knee, clutching his bleeding shoulder, gasping heavily. How many years had it been? In the face of his proud speed, no one had ever been able to injure him. Let alone injure him to this extent. Kazara looked at Roger, who was smiling slightly while holding his sword, and then at Ride, who was holding his umbrella with an indifferent gaze. He no longer had any desire to fight. If they continued, he would truly die. Without hesitation, he transformed into a golden beam of light and shot straight out of Impel Down, fleeing toward the sea without looking back. On the sea surface, a long streak of blood was left behind, instantly attracting the frantic scramble of countless sea kings. Tisk ran pretty fast, Roger pouted. Having eliminated the biggest obstacle, he and Ride flashed and appeared next to Lin Yi. The gazes of the three men locked squarely onto the only remaining enemy, Magellan. Just then, a cold voice tinged with a hint of bloodthirsty excitement drifted faintly from an internal passage of Impel Down. Such dense bloodlust, and sword energy. Whoosh! A sharp sword energy tore through the air, aimed directly at Lin Yi's back. Ride didn't even frown. He raised his parasol in return, spun the surface of the umbrella, and with a ding, effortlessly shattered the sneak-attacking sword energy. From the shadow of the passage, a figure holding a cigar and carrying the famous sword Thunderstorm slowly walked out. It was the head jailer of Impel Down, Shilyu of the Rain. God's repulsion. Roger didn't bother with any pleasantries. He swung an identical slash backward. Fast. Too fast. The sinister smile on Shilyu's face was still frozen on his lips. Before he could even react, the terrifying slash entwined with dark red lightning slammed solidly into his chest. Put! Shilyu was sent flying like a broken kite, spewing a mouthful of blood, crashing heavily into the interior wall of Impel Down, his life or death unknown. I wondered who it was. Turns out it's little scrawny fan. Lin Yi looked at the human-shaped hole and mocked dismissively. Magellan watched Kazara flee and Shilyu get instantly killed, his heart sank completely to the bottom. He knew he was finished. But the dignity of a warden compelled him to let out one last roar. He prepared to launch an all-out, wide-area poison gas attack covering the entire Impel Down, intending to take everyone down with him. However, too noisy, Roger said lightly. The next second, an invisible wave of Haushiku impact surged outward from him, sweeping across the entire area. The surrounding guards preparing to fight back desperately, along with the prisoners affected by the battle, collapsed instantly, eyes rolling back in foam at their mouths, falling down in swathes. Magellan also felt like his brain had been violently struck by a heavy hammer. His vision went black, and he experienced a moment of dizziness. This was the moment. Bullet's massive body appeared in front of him as if teleporting. His fist, covered in thick, purplish armament haki, carried the momentum to shatter everything, smashing fiercely into Magellan's abdomen. Bang! Magellan was bent into a contorted shrimp shape, vomiting up his last meal. His body shot backward like a cannonball, crashing through the wall behind him and leaving a huge hole, completely motionless. Done, time to go. Lin Yi looked at the ravaged battlefield and snapped his fingers in satisfaction. He hadn't forgotten his main business. The phantom of the 10,000 souls banner swept over, quickly collecting the souls of the guards and pirate prisoners who had been accidentally knocked unconscious on the ground. Every mosquito, no matter how small, was still meat. Brothers! Let's go! He shouted excitedly, recollecting Bullet and Ride into the 10,000 souls banner, then swaggered out of the gates of Impel Down with Roger. Standing on the dock, he took a deep breath of the salty sea breeze and yelled toward the ocean, vast waves. Roar! A deafening dragon roar, filled with joy, came from the seabed. A massive blue figure, as large as a small mountain, violently burst through the surface of the sea, kicking up towering giant waves. Lin Yi leaped up, landing steadily on vast waves' incredibly broad head, patting it excitedly. Ha ha ha! Full haul, time to scram! Vast waves' huge figure flickered, his tail whipping hard in the sea. The next second, he shot across the ocean like an arrow loosed from a bow, carving a long white wake across the water, instantly vanishing into the horizon. Leaving behind the underwater prison, which was now utterly silent and utterly ravaged. Chapter 33, Impel Down's Invasion, The World is Shocked. Mr. Garp. No more Senbei. Vice Admiral Tsuru said you've exceeded your quota for this month. On the deck of a warship, a diligent marine major was trying, with a bitter expression, to rescue the last precious pack of soy sauce Senbei from the bottomless pit that was marine hero Garp's mouth. What's there to be afraid of? Garp carelessly popped another piece into his mouth, crunching loudly, and said indistinctly, when we get back to Marineford, I'll just go steal, take a few more packs from Sengoku. On a nearby deck chair, Marine Admiral Akiji Kuzan, wearing his signature eye mask, seemed to be sleeping soundly. Even his slowly swaying leg exuded a lazy aura of don't wake me even if the sky falls. The ComCom belt was just a somewhat boring journey for this marine flagship, which was rushing at full speed to support Impel Down. Just then. Whoosh! A golden light, without warning, flashed from the distant sky at a speed that almost tore through space. The light, carrying a hint of disarray and panic, drew a dazzling arc in the air above the deck, and finally, with a bang, slammed heavily in front of everyone. As the light dissipated, a figure appeared that left all the Marines on board dumbfounded. His yellow and white striped suit was now tattered, stained with a mixture of dried and fresh blood. His face, usually adorned with a lewd smile, was now ashen, and a trace of bloody foam clung to the corner of his mouth. Most horrifying was his right shoulder, where a deep, invisible wound gaped open, as if it had been forcefully torn by some overbearing power. Golden light particles flickered futilely at the edge of the wound, unable to fully heal it. It's Admiral Kizaru. After a brief moment of deadly silence, a terrified scream erupted on the deck. Quick! Call the medics. The Admiral is injured. Admiral Kizaru is injured. Swish! Akiji, who had been dozing a second ago, instantly appeared beside Kizaru. The laziness on his face vanished without a trace, replaced by an unprecedented solemnity. Garp also dropped the senbei in his hand and strode over in a few steps. His usually carefree face was now clouded with gloom. He crouched down, looking at his colleague's miserable state, his voice so heavy it could drip water. Borsellino! Weren't you going to support Impel Down? How did you get so badly injured? He glanced at the horrifying wound, his pupils shrinking sharply. Was it that invader? Leaning on Akiji's support, Kizaru gasped for a few breaths. For the first time, his half-dead voice carried an undisguised sense of terror and weakness. Cough, cough, cough. He opened his mouth, seemingly wanting to say something, but was choked by a gush of blood that rose to his throat, causing him to cough violently. After a long while, he finally recovered, squeezing out two words in a voice almost like a dream. It's Roger. What? Garp's eyes instantly widened. He grabbed Kizaru by the collar, spittle flying, his voice as loud as thunder. What the hell are you talking about? That bastard Roger wasn't executed and thoroughly dead ages ago? Cough. It's true. Kizaru was almost shaken to death by him. He weakly pushed Garp's hand away and said haltingly, it's that underworld heretic Lin Yi, his devil fruit ability, can summon the souls of the dead. Roger was summoned by him in the form of a soul. The entire deck fell into a deathly silence. All the Marines, including Garp and Akiji, had their minds blanked by this immense amount of information. The Pirate King, Gold Roger, reappearing in the world in the form of a soul? What kind of Arabian Nights tale was this? Kizaru ignored everyone's shock. He seemed to want to convey all the information at once, and hurriedly added, also. The solitary Red Patrick Redfield, and Devil's descendant Douglas Bullet, imprisoned in Impel Down Level 6. Their souls were also seized by his ability. He clutched his constantly bleeding shoulder, a look of lingering fear on his face that was uglier than crying. Cough. I was injured under the combined attack of Redfield and Roger. On the ship, even the sound of the sea breeze disappeared. Pirate King Gold Roger. The solitary Red Patrick Redfield. Devil's Descendant Douglas Bullet. These names, one after another, exploded like heavy bombs in everyone's minds. These monstrous figures, existing only in legends, like ghosts and gods, had all reappeared on this sea on the same day, in an inconceivable manner. A plague called panic instantly spread among the Marines. Silence. Garp's roar, like a sudden clap of thunder, finally jolted everyone out of their daze. His weather-beaten face was now terribly grim. Full speed ahead. Return to Marineford first. Marineford, Marshal's office. Bang! Sengoku slammed his hand on the table, making the documents on it jump. He glared fiercely at Garp and Akiji, who had just returned from the front line. His face, usually composed like a tactical genius, was now filled with disbelief. Say that again? Roger? Redfield? Bullet? Absolutely true. Akiji's expression was also unusually serious. He pointed towards the infirmary. Borsellino's injuries are the best proof. The wound still carries the overwhelmingly powerful Haushaku aura of that guy Roger. Outrageous. Sengoku's forehead throbbed with anger. A devil fruit that can summon the souls of legendary powerhouses? How could such a cheating thing appear on this sea? I don't care about anyone else. Garp sat on a nearby sofa, crunching senbei loudly, his eyes burning with fighting spirit. Sengoku! I'm going to go capture that bastard Roger again. Shut up, Garp! Sengoku roared at him, feeling his head start to ache again. Is this a time to be impulsive? Little Tsuru, what do you think? Sengoku rubbed his temples, looking at Vice Admiral Tsuru, the Marine's chief of staff, who had remained silent but was deeply frowning. Vice Admiral Tsuru slowly raised her teacup, blew on the hot liquid, her eyes terrifyingly calm. First, immediately block all news of Admiral Kizaru's severe injuries and Roger's reappearance. Not a single word is allowed to leak out. Her voice was not loud, but it carried an undeniable authority. The Admiral's severe injuries would shake the world's trust in our Marine's top combat power. And Roger's resurrection would turn the already turbulent sea into an uncontrollable cauldron of magma. Second, she put down her teacup, her gaze sweeping over everyone present, immediately re-evaluate the threat level of underworld heretic Lin Yi. This kind of ability, if he is allowed to continue growing, when he commands an army of legendary powerhouses' souls, the consequences are unimaginable. The atmosphere in the office was extremely heavy. He must be contained before he completely grows strong. Vice Admiral Tsuru said, word by word. Otherwise, the Marine and the world government could face the danger of being overthrown by him. Sengoku took a deep breath, forcibly suppressed the shock in his heart, and sat back in the marshal's seat, his eyes becoming sharp. Garp! Your mission is not to catch Roger, but to keep a close eye on the New World's movements. No one is allowed to act rashly before the world government issues its final order. He looked at the displeased Garp, his tone leaving no room for argument. The next day, countless news coups, like a white tide, flew overwhelmingly to every corner of the world. Newspapers and wanted posters, like snowflakes, fell into royal palaces, bustling cities, and onto the dining tables of the monsters in the New World. Impel down shocking riot. Demon Emperor of 10,000 souls Lin Yi emerges, bounty soars to 800 million berries. The newspaper concealed Roger's appearance and Kizaru's severe injuries, only stating that Lin Yi, with a bizarre ability, caused massive chaos in Impel Down and killed several prisoners on the 6th level, including the legendary Great Pirates World Destroyer, the Solitary Red, and Devil's Descendant. And on the brand new wanted poster, Lin Yi's profile, with a defiant smile, was incredibly striking. Deity or alive Demon Emperor of 10,000 souls Lin Yi bounty, 800,000,000 crimes, invading Impel Down, killing guards and multiple prisoners. His devil fruit ability can seize others' souls for combat. Known to command the souls of the solitary Red Patrick Redfield and Devil's descendant Douglas Bullet. Extremely dangerous, dead or alive. Alabasta, Rainbase. Shichibukai Crocodile put down the newspaper in his hand, a playful smirk curling at the corner of his cigar-holding mouth, but his brows were deeply furrowed. Seizing souls? Redfield. Bullet. Heh, what an interesting ability. On an island in the New World. Countless great pirates looked at the report, their expressions varied, some shocked, some greedy, some wary. A new variable, capable of changing the course of battle, had appeared. And on a certain unknown island, floating 10,000 meters in the sky, a man with a ship's helm embedded in his head and long golden hair was holding the freshly released newspaper between two fingers, reading it with great relish. Jaya ha 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 ha. He first laughed softly, then his laughter grew louder, more unrestrained, and finally, it became his signature, sky-shattering roar of laughter. Kaya ha 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 ha. Interesting. What an interesting devil fruit ability. To be able to bring out the souls of the dead to fight? Golden Lion Shiki crumpled the newspaper, his golden pupils gleaming with excitement and greed. Bullet, Redfield. Jaya ha ha ha. Even those old geezers have become his collection? He suddenly rose from his throne, and the terrifying aura of a legendary great pirate made the entire floating island tremble slightly. This kid called Demon Emperor of 10,000 Souls. He bared his teeth, revealing a chilling smile. Very good. He is very qualified to join my ranks. Jaya ha 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 ha. I'll go invite him myself. No sooner had he spoken. His figure shot up into the sky, transforming into a golden streak of light, and without looking back, he flew rapidly towards the sea where Impeldown was located. Chapter 34, The Demon Emperor of 10,000 Souls, and 800 Million Bounty. Fu Lin Yi lay sprawled in a big shape, like a corpse drained of its essence, firmly stuck to the creaking broken wooden bed in a safe house on an unnamed small island. For 3 whole days. Aside from necessary sips of water and a few bites of dry rations, he barely moved. That extreme one-day tour of Impeldown had almost completely drained him, mentally speaking. But at this moment, a smile, almost lewd, that he couldn't suppress, hung on his slightly pale face. His eyes were closed, yet his consciousness was clearer than ever, as if he had God's perspective, frantically reviewing in his spiritual world. It felt great. It felt so damn great. An unprecedented sense of power, like warm magma, surged steadily and forcefully through his limbs and bones, and through his meridians, which had widened several times. Every cell in his body cheered, and every bone sang a joyful song. Is this the threshold of a king? With a thought, his consciousness instantly sank into the core area of the 10,000 Souls banner. It was practically a VIP room in a legendary nursing home. The soul of that old madman, Burndy World, had been completely refined, becoming the first pot of gold to nourish his Haushaku. And 3 other brand new, glittering SSR cards were suspended side by side in the core area, emanating a terrifying aura that made one's heart palpitate. Pirate King Roger, the solitary Redfield, Devil's descendant Bullet. Lin Yi almost drooled looking at these 3 renowned names. This lineup, if brought out, could directly contend with a 4 Emperor's crew, right? Although Roger's state hadn't fully recovered, and Redfield was still old and weakened, it didn't matter. Now he had a large family and a thriving business, there was plenty of nourishment to replenish them. In the level 6 prison of Impeldown, he seemed to be timidly hiding everywhere, but he showed no mercy when collecting souls, imprisoning many great pirates who had never come out since being locked up. Some died of old age, some died in mutual slaughter, and some were tortured to death by the guards. In any case, he harvested thousands of high-quality souls, making a fortune in one go. He. Lin Yi lay on the bed, letting out a lecherous laugh, his shoulders shrugging, looking like a madman who had just won a 5 million berries lottery. Alright, wipe your drool. Aren't you ashamed? Roger's lazy voice sounded in his mind on cue, full of contempt. Look at your lack of ambition, you're so happy you've become an idiot. What the hell do you know? Lin Yi retorted indignantly in his mind, this is the joy of a collector. A brute like you, who only knows how to fight and kill, wouldn't understand. Every single one of these cards is a work of art. They're limited edition figures I risked my life to get. Just as he was about to argue with Roger some more, the old wooden door of the safe house suddenly creaked open. A plain-faced underground intelligence dealer's soul, responsible for providing them with supplies and information, poked his head in, his face a complex mix of awe and fear. He carefully placed the latest newspaper and a rolled-up item on the table by the door, not daring to even glance at Lin Yi. He stammered, "Lo. Lord, what you wanted, the whole world, is now crazy." After speaking, he scrambled out as if a ghost were chasing him, as if staying for another second would get him eaten. Lin Yi raised an eyebrow, leaping off the bed with the lightness of a cat. He walked to the table in a few steps, first unfolding the newspaper that still smelled of ink. The next second, his pupils suddenly constricted. The front page headline of the newspaper, printed in the thickest, darkest, and most eye-catching font, bore a title that was enough to shake the entire world: Impel Down's worst invasion in history. Multiple legendary great pirates dead. Mysterious person identified as. Below the title was a blurry side profile photo, cropped from a surveillance transponder snail. It was him, in his guard uniform. Damn, these reporters are quick. Lin Yi clicked his tongue and continued reading. The newspaper described the Yi dire state, inside Impel Down with exaggerated and inflammatory language. Level 6 prisoners mysteriously fainted en masse, multiple legendary great pirates lost vital signs, hundreds of guards suffered mental trauma. The lingering traces of the new yet utterly domineering Haoshiku, and the scene of catastrophic destruction on the first floor, enraged Marineford. Lin Yi read with relish, a wide grin stretching to his ears. Not bad, not bad. This writing style is much better than my year-end summaries from back then. But it didn't report on Roger, nor on Kizaru, who we injured and escaped. TSK. He shook his head slightly, dissatisfied, then unhurriedly picked up the paper roll tied with string on the table. He untied the string. With a whoosh, a brand new wanted poster slowly unfurled before him. The photo was still that side profile shot, but much clearer than in the newspaper. In the photo, his lips were curved in a playful, arrogant arc, his eyes disdainful, as if he looked down on everyone. A good candid shot, very expressive. Then, his gaze slowly moved downwards. When he saw the shocking numbers below the photo, his breathing instantly stopped. DAD or alive Lin Yi bounty, 800,000,000 800 million. A full 800 million berries. But that wasn't what excited him the most. He saw that above his name, the codename representing his identity had quietly changed. No longer the underworld heretic that sounded a bit like a con artist. Instead, it was 3 Chinese characters filled with darkness, dominance, and supreme majesty: demon. Emperor of 10,000 souls. Lin Yi gripped the ends of the wanted poster, his mouth slowly widening, his expression shifting from shock to ecstasy, and finally, to an extreme, smug satisfaction, like a small man who had suddenly achieved great success. Ha 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 ha. He could no longer hold back, throwing his head back and letting out an earth-shattering roar of laughter, tears almost streaming from his eyes. He held the wanted poster like an admission letter for the top scholar, excitedly rushing to Roger's phantom and showing off frantically. Old Luo, look. Demon Emperor of 10,000 souls. Listen. This name. He shoved the wanted poster in front of Roger's face, flushed with excitement. Isn't it 1,000,000 times cooler than your lousy Pirate King? Ha! Pirate King sounds like a country bumpkin. Demon Emperor. Now that's prestige. That's class. Roger was splattered with his spittle, disdainfully floating back half a meter, rolling his eyes dramatically with a look that said, "You idiot." All right, you have prestige, you have class. Chapter 35, Roger at full power. All right, you've got presence, you've got style. Roger's phantom floated in midair, looking at Lin Yi with the gaze one might reserve for a landlord's dim-witted son, expressing the deepest disdain for his behavior of dancing around with the bounty poster. Lin Yi didn't care at all. He carefully rolled up the certificate of honor worth 800 million berries and tucked it into his robes, feeling his spine straighten a bit. You bet. He puffed out his chest proudly. Don't you see who I am? The Demon Emperor of 10,000 souls. One listen to that title and you know I'm not someone to be trifled with. From now on, whenever I go out and announce this name, people will have to think twice. After he finished gloating, he finally remembered the business at hand. The greatest harvest from this trip to Impel Down wasn't just a bounty poster. It's time to take stock of our assets. Lin Yi rubbed his hands together, the smile on his face becoming increasingly lewd, like a gambler about to open a loot box. With a thought, the phantom of the 10,000 souls banner flashed behind him. Shwa! 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 Four figures appeared out of thin air in the cramped space of the safe house, the remaining four of the Elite Five. They still looked as handsome and aloof as ever, but now, the look in their eyes as they watched Lin Yi held a hint of fanatical worship alongside their absolute loyalty. Their master was now a top-tier powerhouse capable of going toe-to-toe with a marine admiral. Lin Yi's gaze swept over them, finally settling on an empty spot, his expression turning slightly complex. Number 2 of the Elite Five, a soul who had been a member of a small kingdom's royalty in life and was born with the qualities of a king, had been completely refined and absorbed as the most crucial catalyst the moment Lin Yi awakened his conqueror's haki. It could be said that without him, there would be no Demon Emperor of 10,000 souls. You've done a great service, brother, Lin Yi muttered to himself, his gaze sharpening once more. The team had to be complete. He closed his eyes, his consciousness sinking into the vast, star-like sea of souls within the 10,000 souls banner. Thousands of high-quality souls picked up from Impel Down flickered like stars. He needed a new number 2, a soul with enough potential and a sufficiently resilient will to fill this position. You'll do. Lin Yi's consciousness locked onto the soul of a pirate captain who had a bounty of 600 million in life and was famous for his powerful armament haki and physical techniques. Though this guy wasn't very bright, he was tough and reckless, making him a perfect tank for charging into battle. An order was issued, and the pirate captain's soul was stripped from the Sea of Souls. Lin Yi skillfully adjusted his appearance, making his temperament indistinguishable from the other four. The new Elite Five were assembled once again. Next is the main event. The corners of Lin Yi's mouth curled into an even wider grin. Come forth, my two legendary collectibles. With a low shout, two more figures descended with a bang. One was Douglas Bullet, a man with a physique as massive as a prehistoric beast, radiating an aura of pure violence. The moment he appeared, the temperature in the safe house seemed to drop several degrees. His unreasonable sense of pressure made even the new number 2 soul tremble slightly. The other was the aloof man in a red suit holding a parasol, Patrick Redfield. However, at this moment, his soul form appeared somewhat illusory, carrying a sense of senile decay and weakness, looking like a scrawny old man. TSK, Lin Yi shook his head at Ride's appearance. Old Ride. Did you not eat well in prison? Look how starved you are. After finishing the head count of the new members, he turned his gaze toward Roger beside him. Old Luo, let's talk business. Lin Yi's expression became uncharacteristically serious. For these past 10 years, you've patiently stayed by my side and taught me. I wouldn't be where I am today without you, you deserve the most credit. Most of the souls we've obtained over the years were just mediocre trash. To you, those were like eating chaff, they couldn't satisfy your hunger at all. After all these years, your strength has only recovered to the admiral level. Roger heard this and just gave a faint smile, saying nothing. With my mortal body, I've absorbed Burndy World and those other great pirates in succession. Now my head feels like a crowded market with too many messy memories. I need to take it slow, otherwise, I'll turn myself into an idiot. Lin Yi took a deep breath, his eyes burning. So, the top-tier ingredients we got from Impel Down this time will be prioritized for you. Your strength is my strength. Today, I'll let you eat your fill first. He waved his hand with grand ambition. Let's go. Let's find a more spacious place. Today, we feast. On the other side of the nameless island, upon a vast stretch of rocky beach. The sea breeze howled, kicking up waves like 1,000 piles of snow. Lin Yi stood in the center, pushing the power of the 10,000 souls banner to its limit. "Dinner is served," he shouted, and the massive banner shadow behind him shook violently. Buzz! In an instant, thousands of soul motes radiating various colors poured out of the banner like a bursting river of stars. It was a torrent composed of pure soul energy. Among them, pirates with bounties over 100 million were as numerous as stars, and there were even several great pirates with bounties over 500 million. Under Lin Yi's precise control, this majestic torrent of souls bypassed the others and, like dragons returning to their nest, surged frantically toward a single target: Roger. "Ha ha ha! Excellent!" Roger roared toward the sky, his laughter filled with a long-lost sense of liberation. He spread his arms, completely defenseless, welcoming the baptism of that soul energy. Boom! The moment the first torrent of souls crashed into his soul body, a visible and incredibly powerful shockwave erupted from him as the center. His figure, which had originally been plagued by illness, began to become more spirited and solid at a rate visible to the naked eye. His aura climbed steadily, like a volcano about to erupt, frantically accumulating power. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. High-quality souls were swallowed by him. His soul origin, once depleted by illness and death, was being rapidly filled, repaired, and even surpassed. The surrounding environment began to be affected by the aura he unconsciously emitted. The gravel on the ground began to tremble slightly, and then with a series of poof sounds, it was all reduced to powder by an invisible force. Lin Yi was forced back repeatedly by the increasingly terrifying air pressure, but a look of wild joy was plastered on his face. He knew that the man who once reigned over the seas was coming back. Finally, at a certain moment, the air across the entire rocky beach seemed to be gripped by an invisible giant hand, suddenly coming to a standstill. Time and space seemed to freeze at this very instant. The next second. Boom! An unprecedented, peerlessly domineering, and terrifying haki, as if it wanted to trample both the heavens and the sea underfoot, surged from within Roger's body toward the sky. That wasn't just a simple Haushiku shockwave, it was a king's aura that stood above everything else. Ha 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 ha. Roger's extremely hearty laughter echoed through the clouds, shaking the sea surface into violent ripples. This feeling. It's absolutely wonderful. His voice was full of the exhilaration of having a heavy burden lifted. It's as if a mountain pressing down on my soul has been lifted all at once. No. 10 mountains. Ha ha ha. Looking at that figure and hearing that familiar laughter, Lin Yi couldn't help but grin and laugh along, overjoyed. He's back. He's finally back. This is the true Pirate King. Gold Roger in his peak state. The world's strongest man who single-handedly inaugurated an era. Whitebeard? Old. Kaido? A blockhead. Now, in my team stands a genuine, full health, full mana world's strongest. Who else is there? Lin Yi felt his adrenaline surging wildly, a surge of pride rushing straight to his head. Right now, forget about the 4 Emperor's crews, even if Marineford itself sailed in front of me, I'd dare to pull my ship right alongside them and arm wrestle with Sengoku. The king of pulling alongside, Lin Yi, officially reporting for duty today. After the excitement passed, Lin Yi checked inside the 10,000 souls banner. Well, after filling Roger's stomach, there were still 1 or 2,000 decent quality souls left. His gaze fell upon the scrawny, envious-looking Redfield nearby. Old Ride, your turn. With a wave of his hand, Lin Yi poured all the remaining souls into Ride's body in one go. Ride's soul body shook violently, letting out a groan of extreme comfort, his face displaying the same blissful expression Roger had just shown. Boom! Another powerful haki spread out. Although it was far from being as peerlessly domineering as Roger's, it still firmly stepped into a brand new realm. Patrick Redfield's strength has recovered to the Admiral level. At his peak, Ride was just like Roger, a solid 4 Emperor's peak-level powerhouse. Now, with limited resources, recovering to the Admiral level was enough. Lin Yi looked at the lineup before him with satisfaction, his heart blooming with joy. 1 Roger with 4 Emperor's peak combat power. 1 Bullet, who was already an admiral-level combatant in his prime. 1 Ride, who had just recovered to admiral-level combat power. Holy shit! Lin Yi cursed in his head. Aside from those 2 cheaters, the world government and Marineford, where else on this vast sea can I not go? Awesome! This is absolutely exhilarating. Ha ha ha. Chapter 36, confiding in Roger. The rum in the barrel bubbled out steam as if it were free, pouring into a large sea bowl and splashing up white foam. Drink, drink, drink. Ha ha ha. Bullet's voice was like thunder, shaking the coconut trees on the small island. He held a sea bowl larger than a human head and poured the liquor directly down his throat, the liquid streaming over his bulging muscles without a hint of regret. The Elite 5 next to him were not to be outdone, each more fierce than the last, their faces flushed red like a monkey's backside. The bonfire burned brightly, its light reflecting off their wild, laughing faces. This nameless island usually only had seabirds and sea breeze. Today, it was bustling like a New Year's celebration, thanks to this group of special individuals. Lin Yi nestled in a bearskin mat, holding a small, warm wine cup. The alcohol was starting to flush his cheeks. He squinted, looking at the boisterous old pals in front of him, feeling utterly content. The rules of the pirate world, tisk, he smacked his lips, savoring the rich, sweet aroma of the wine. Souls can eat and drink to their heart's content. Although they don't get hungry if they don't eat, they can still taste, which is incredible. Redfield was not as crude. His fingers were long and slender, gently holding a carved wineglass, the crimson liquid inside swaying like blood, yet also like fire. He merely took a slow sip, his posture so elegant that it seemed he wasn't at a pirate bonfire feast, but at a high society wine reception, appreciating a vintage fine wine. Roger, next to him, was already completely drunk, mumbling incoherently, his tune completely off-key, but the joy he felt was palpable to everyone. Yahohoho yahohoho, he sang intermittently, having forgotten most of the lyrics, yet the grandeur and pathos of Bink's sake pierced through the soul. As Lin Yi listened, his smile gradually faded. His heart felt as if it had been pricked by a tiny fishbone. It didn't hurt, but it was somewhat unsettling. He remembered back then. When he first transmigrated, he was unfamiliar with the place and was chased by 2 ruffians like a rabbit, utterly disheveled. His heart was terrified, only wanting to survive, only wanting to become stronger. At that time, he had no time to think about morality or human relationships, only how to use his cheat and how to carve out a place for himself in this messed up world. Now, I have everything I damn well wanted. He mumbled, taking another sip of wine. Strength, he had it. Companions, he had them. All those past fears, that confusion and helplessness, that craving for power. Now, they were like withered grass burned by the bonfire, turned to ash, scattered by the wind. His heart felt unprecedentedly calm and at ease. But the more at ease he felt, the more pronounced that tiny fishbone became. His gaze unconsciously drifted towards Roger. Roger was still yohohoing, his soul body appearing somewhat transparent in the firelight. An indescribable guilt, like a vine, wrapped around Lin Yi's heart. Redfield gently put down his wineglass. His usually indifferent eyes now saw through people's hearts again. He glanced at Lin Yi, then at Roger, who was singing with gusto, and a subtle, almost imperceptible curve appeared at the corner of his mouth, carrying a hint of knowing understanding. He didn't speak, but simply raised a hand towards the Elite 5, who were currently having a drinking contest with Bullet. The few souls understood instantly, silently pushing Bullet, laughing and joking, moving the battlefield farther away. Come on, come on. Boss Bullet, you must finish this drink. Ha ha ha. Bring it on. Who's afraid of whom? The clamor faded a bit, leaving only Lin Yi and Roger, and the crackling of the bonfire. Roger also seemed to sense something suddenly, and his humming slowly stopped. His eyes, always carrying 3 parts smile and 7 parts carefree abandon, looked directly at Lin Yi. What's wrong with you, kid? He burped, the spicy scent of rum on his breath. Too happy? You look like you're holding in a poop, as if someone owes you millions of berries. Lin Yi stiffened. His knuckles, gripping the wineglass, were turning white. He wanted to speak but hesitated, opening and closing his mouth. Something seemed to be stuck in his throat, preventing him from making a sound. Roger didn't rush him, just watched him quietly, a hint of confusion in his eyes. "Speak up, don't be so hesitant. That's not like you, kid." Lin Yi took a deep breath, as if making a decision. "Roger." He didn't call him Roger, but by his real name, Roger. He spoke each word distinctly, his voice a bit hoarse and rough, like something abrasive rubbing together. "When I first obtained your soul, my immediate thought was that I had acquired a powerful tool." Roger's drinking motion paused, and the wineglass in his hand slowly lowered to the ground. The drunkenness on his face seemed to be instantly blown away by the sea breeze, leaving only clarity and profundity. Lin Yi didn't look at his expression, just lowered his head and continued speaking. "Moreover, at that time, my own strength was weak, and I didn't dare let you appear under your true name. I was afraid your reputation would attract big trouble and affect me, so I changed your name to Roger." He paused here, then looked up at Roger. Roger just watched him quietly, without interrupting, without anger, not even a trace of emotion. His deep eyes seemed to reflect the entire ocean, terrifyingly calm. "At that time, I also knew." Lin Yi's voice grew softer, laced with heavy self-reproach, "that your wife and child were being hunted by the Marines, and that the result would be Rouge carrying the child for 20 months to protect him, ultimately dying of exhaustion after giving birth to Ace." He suddenly looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "But I didn't tell you. I didn't say anything. I'm a damn bastard." Roger's gaze finally trembled slightly. He pondered for a long time. There was no fury, no blame. Just a soft sigh. That sigh seemed to have traveled from the distant past, across countless seas, to finally arrive. "I can understand you." He spoke slowly, his voice hoarse, yet carrying a sense of magnanimity from having experienced much. "At that time, you were too weak to do anything. You were just a small person trying desperately to survive." He raised a hand and gently patted Lin Yi's shoulder, his whole body emitting a trace of warmth. "If you had told me about this then, and we went together to save Rouge and Ace, under the very noses of Garp and the world government, there would have been virtually no chance of success. Although Garp and I had a good relationship, our positions were different. Upon seeing my soul still alive, for the sake of the justice he stood for, he would never have let me or you go. So the result would only have been both of us being arrested or dealt with by the world government. So, changing my name to conceal my identity in that matter, perhaps, letting nature take its course was the best arrangement. At least, Ace survived under Garp's protection, didn't he?" Lin Yi's shoulders trembled slightly, and his eyes felt warm. He looked up, his gaze carrying a hint of hope. "Now, our strength is already strong enough, we don't need to be so cautious anymore." His voice trembled. "Do you want to go see Ace?" Roger merely shook his head at the question. His face held a trace of bitterness, a trace of contentment, and a trace of indescribable weariness. "No need." His voice was low, carrying an unspeakable sense of age and experience. "I'm already very satisfied knowing he's living well now." He gazed at the dark sea in the distance, his eyes profound, as if he could see a distant figure. "I also have no face to meet him." The wind swept across the small island, carrying the salty scent of the sea. Sparks from the bonfire crackled upwards, as if carrying secrets to the starry sky. Lin Yi was silent for a moment, then a relieved smile appeared on his face. That smile was like the parting of clouds, finally revealing a clear, bright sky. He nodded heavily. "Then, I'll change back to your true name now." His tone was solemn, each word distinct. "Pirate King, Gold Roger." "Roger, that name sounds like a bootleg, ha." He made a joke, trying to break the heavy atmosphere. Roger was stunned for a moment. Then, his eyes instantly burst with brilliant light. First, a low chuckle, then the laughter grew louder, wilder, and finally turned into his iconic, booming laugh that echoed across the entire island. "Ha ha ha. Bootleg? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say I'm a bootleg now. Ha ha ha." He suddenly stood up, his soul body swaying in the firelight, yet more solid than ever before. After all, the pirate king who started the great pirate era is a thing of the past. He stretched out a finger, pointing at Lin Yi, his eyes filled with endless approval and grandeur. Now he paused, his voice carrying an unprecedented sense of relief and freedom, am just one of the souls in your 10,000 souls banner, ready to turn this messed up world upside down. He suddenly spread his arms, laughing up at the sky, his laughter filled with a complete sense of liberation, a brand new beginning. You can call me whatever you want. Ha ha ha. Ride in the Elite Five, not far away, heard the familiar wild laughter in the phrase, call me whatever you want, and all let out a sigh of relief. Looks like everything's fine. Then let's keep drinking. Ha ha ha. They moved the rum barrel over again, and the clamor resumed. Lin Yi looked at the free-spirited and charismatic pirate king before him, and a wide smile also spread across his face. The fishbone that had been stuck in his heart for 10 years was finally removed. His breathing became much smoother. Roger. Lin Yi murmured the name, feeling its immense reality. He knew that their story had just begun. Chapter 37, an SSR delivered to the doorstep. Splash, splash. East side of the small island, shallow beach. The waves rhythmically lapped against the reef, like someone counting beats next to your ear. Lin Yi held a seashell as a bowl in one hand and a random fish from the sea in the other, gnawing on it while rinsing his mouth with seawater. The saltiness of the seawater was somewhat refreshing, like peppermint, but bits of seaweed kept getting stuck in his teeth, which was annoying. He had just had a heart-to-heart talk with old man Roger the night before, and his heart felt more at ease than ever. Now, whether it was the sea breeze or the waves, everything seemed to have its own background music, and even the scorching sun above seemed several degrees gentler than usual. Suddenly, Lin Yi felt a shadow overhead. He instinctively looked up, thinking it was a dark cloud blocking the sun on this clear day. But when he looked up, Lin Yi dropped the seashell in his hand with a clatter. That wasn't any dark cloud. It was clearly an ancient-looking pirate ship, arrogantly and domineeringly, stopped right above his head. The ship was enormous, but it didn't touch the sea's surface at all, just floating there, steady as a rock. Most ridiculously, there was a man with golden hair standing on the deck at the bow. The man had flowing golden hair and looked young, but there was a hint of vicissitude at his temples. Most strikingly, a helm was stuck right on his head. Lin Yi's mind went buzz, as if he had been slapped by a sea king's tail, and he was instantly dazed. But the next second, the man let out a burst of his signature wild laughter. Ha 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 ha. Who the hell are you? How dare you stop your ghost ship above me? Are you looking for death? Lin Yi instinctively shouted at the ship in the sky, almost choking on his own voice. As he shouted, his mind raced. Golden hair, a helm stuck on his head, able to float in the air, that signature laugh. Wasn't this the legendary flying pirate Golden Lion Shiki, who was on par with Roger and Whitebeard? Wow! This is a legendary SSR delivered right to the doorstep? And it's self-delivering. 1,000 sea kings stampeded through his heart, filled with extreme joy, excitement, and shock. He almost passed out on the spot. Golden Lion Shiki didn't understand Lin Yi's words, but he still looked down at him with his sharp golden eyes, his laughter wild but with a hint of scrutiny. Ha 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 ha. What ghost ship? Kid. I heard you caused a ruckus and impel down, killed many great pirates, and used your devil fruit ability to imprison their souls. Lin Yi listened and thought, so he's here for me? His eyes darted around, and he immediately had a plan. Yeah. He put on a nonchalant face and even beckoned Golden Lion Shiki with his finger, like a solicitor on the street rather than someone talking to a legendary pirate. What's up? Are you here to join my 10,000 souls banner family? As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi activated his ability. Buzz, a faint black shadow with an eerie aura instantly gathered at his fingertip, then grew rapidly with the wind. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a banner as tall as a 2-story building, shrouded in black mist, with the banner fluttering as if countless tormented souls were wailing inside, making one's hair stand on end. This 10,000 souls banner was a name given by his past life's netizens to mock the 10,000 souls banner, sounding more domineering and upright, and more fitting for his collector identity. After all, his collections were all of the emperor. Level. Golden Lion Shiki looked at the banner shrouded in black mist and the faintly visible ferocious ghost shadows on it. The corner of his mouth twitched, his expression as awkward as if he had swallowed a fly. 10,000 souls banner. He sneered, his eyes full of disdain. I don't care what banner this time I'm inviting you to be my crew member. How about it? Come to my ship, and I can make you my vice captain. Vice captain. Lin Yi heard this and was unimpressed. He couldn't hear anything else. Because all he could see was a shiny, legendary SSR Shiki, posing seductively in front of him. Lin Yi almost drooled all over the floor. This is a living one. A living legendary SSR. He thought to himself, I must capture this old man in the 10,000 souls banner. I must. His hand had already unconsciously reached for his sword hilt, his eyes gleaming with greed like a hungry wolf seeing meat. He was about to roll up his sleeves and have a friendly exchange with this old man, intending to capture this legendary card first. But at that moment, cough, cough. A soft cough sounded in his ear. Lin Yi stiffened and turned his head to look. Roger's shadow had somehow slowly and leisurely appeared beside him. His face showed a helplessness with Lin Yi, mixed with a hint of amusement at the show. He first rolled his eyes at Lin Yi, then looked up at Golden Lion Shiki in the air, his voice filled with an indescribable vicissitude and teasing. Shiki. Long time no see. On the deck, Golden Lion Shiki, who had been looking down with arrogance, shivered when he saw Roger. His golden eyes widened instantly, almost popping out of their sockets. Roger. His voice was filled with shock and a hint of disbelief and fear, staring straight at Roger's soul. You're still alive. No, wait, you're in spiritual form. You've been captured by this kid. Roger chuckled, his arms crossed, looking leisurely with a hint of mischief on his face. That's right, he said calmly yet firmly. I'm now a crew member of this kid. How about it? Old buddy, doesn't this identity suit me well? What nonsense! Roger! Golden Lion Shiki exploded instantly, pointing at Roger and then at Lin Yi, his face filled with disbelief and anger, his voice even becoming shrill. You're a man I acknowledge. How can you be subservient to someone else, let alone this brat? His last three words, this brat, were almost shouted out, filled with thick contempt and unwillingness. Before Roger could say anything, Lin Yi's hot temper flared up. Hey! He drew his sword and pointed it straight at Golden Lion Shiki in the air, his eyes filled with defiance. Who are you calling a brat? Before he finished speaking, Lin Yi flicked his wrist, and his sword instantly drew a sharp arc. Buzz! A strike imbued with faint black soul power shot out like an arrow, howling towards Golden Lion Shiki. This was the result of Lin Yi's training in Impel Down. He combined his devil fruit ability with his swordsmanship, and his strikes even contained a hint of spiritual damage. Ha 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 ha. Mere tricks. Golden Lion Shiki sneered and casually sent out a wave of force, meeting Lin Yi's soul power strike. Clang. Chapter 38, Reunion with an Old Friend, a single slash upon meeting. Clang. The harsh sound of clashing metal rang out. The sword strike collided instantly with the soul power slash, and then, the soul power slash shattered in response. But just as Golden Lion Shiki thought everything was fine and prepared to continue his taunts, the arrogant smile on his face suddenly froze. Because the shattered soul power slash, at the moment of its destruction, transformed into a wisp of an even stranger, colder pale black airflow. That airflow, its speed undiminished but rather increased, carried a bizarre aura that made one's soul tremble, darting toward his face like a striking viper. Golden Lion Shiki let out an astonished low cry, his pupils shrinking sharply. He shifted his body, barely dodging the erosion of that strange airflow, and his expression sank. The way he looked at Lin Yi was no longer filled with the previous contempt, but rather intense scrutiny and a trace of gravity. A little interesting. he murmured, his voice much lower. Reading the reports before, I thought this kid's strength relied mainly on his devil fruit ability, using the souls of his subordinates to cause chaos and impel down. I didn't expect his own strength to be quite good. Ha 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 ha. Kid, your strength isn't bad. I underestimated you. Golden Lion Shiki quickly resumed his arrogant posture, though a hint of viciousness was added to his smile. But this level of strength is still not enough to impress me, Golden Lion. Boom! As soon as the words fell, an astonishing conqueror's haki burst forth from Golden Lion Shiki's body like a tangible shockwave. That haki, carrying the arrogance of ruling the world and the bloodiness of long years on the battlefield, instantly ignited the entire beach, even causing the air to solidify. Lin Yi only felt a tightness in his chest, and his breathing momentarily stalled for half a second. But he was no longer the defenseless corporate slave he used to be. Humph! Lin Yi was not to be outdone. The conqueror's haki that had been accumulating within him also erupted like a volcanic explosion, blasting out to meet the impact of Golden Lion Shiki's haki. Rumble! The two conquerors' haki clashed fiercely in mid-air, emitting an invisible roar. The surrounding seawater seemed to boil violently, churning and kicking up giant waves several meters high. Even the small island not far away trembled slightly. A trace of surprise flashed across Golden Lion Shiki's face, immediately turning into satisfaction. He nodded, his golden pupils holding a hint of admiration. He actually possesses the qualification of a king. Not bad, not bad. He changed the subject, and a ferocious look suddenly flashed across his face. However, boom! Golden Lion Shiki violently increased the intensity of his conqueror's haki. That impact force instantly surged several times stronger, pressing down on Lin Yi like a monstrous tsunami. Put! Lin Yi let out a muffled groan, feeling a sweetness in his chest and a metallic taste in his throat, nearly spitting out a mouthful of blood. Two deep ravines were plowed into the ground beneath his feet, and his entire body was forced back repeatedly by the terrifying impact of the haki, unable to keep his footing. Just as Lin Yi was about to be completely overturned by this haki. Enough, Shiki. Roger's voice, carrying an irrefutable majesty yet sounding effortless, sounded beside him. Have you played enough? Boom! The next second, an even more terrifying, more domineering, and more supreme conqueror's haki, like an awakened ancient giant beast, erupted from Roger's soul form. This haki was pure and majestic, like the heavens collapsing and the earth sinking, or an abyss awakening. It carried an incomparable aura of king, instantly crushing, devouring, and disintegrating Golden Lion Shiki's arrogant conqueror's haki. The arrogance on Golden Lion Shiki's face instantly froze, replaced by deep horror and disbelief. Rumble! His entire pirate ship overhead shook violently under the impact of Roger's terrifying conqueror's haki. The sails flapped and tore, and the wooden planks emitted unbearable creaking sounds. Put! Golden Lion Shiki felt as if a heavy hammer had smashed into his head. His vision went black, his chest tightened, and a mouthful of blood instantly rushed up his throat, spraying out. The most terrifying part was that the ship's rudder above his head, under the deterrence of Roger's peak haki, actually cracked with a kacha sound. A dazzling streak of red, like a spring of blood, shot out from the wound pierced by the rudder above his head, dyeing his golden hair red. Roger! Your strength! Golden Lion Shiki clutched the top of his head, his voice filled with deep fear and trembling, his body even shaking slightly. It had been a long, long time since he had felt such terrifying pressure. Roger just smiled disdainfully, his eyes holding a hint of mockery and pity. Ha ha! He shook his head, his tone carrying the teasing of old friends, yet filled with irrefutable suppression. Shiki, oh Shiki, you're old, you're not up to it anymore. Bastard! Roger! Golden Lion Shiki was completely enraged by Roger's words, you're old, you're not up to it anymore. His eyes turned bloodshot, the veins on his forehead bulged, and his originally pale face instantly flushed red with anger. Watch me kill you. He violently raised his hand and activated his ability. Lion's Might, Earth Binding. Rumble. The surrounding seawater instantly came alive, manipulated by an invisible force, violently surging upward to form a hideous, giant waterspout. Carrying an aura of world-destroying might, it roared toward Roger. Tisk. Roger curled his lip dismissively. He simply waved his hand, and the phantom of his blade drew an arcane trajectory in the air. Boom! That waterspout was instantly crushed by an invisible force, turning into scattered water droplets that sprinkled onto the sea surface like a torrential downpour. Again! Golden Lion Shiki was unconvinced. He roared furiously and activated his ability again. Lion, Thousand Slices Valley. A sky full of golden slashes, like a storm of pear blossoms, poured down toward Roger. Roger just chuckled lightly, waving the phantom of his blade as elusive as a gazelle hanging from a horn. His movements were ethereal, and he effortlessly neutralized all the slashes. He looked at Golden Lion Shiki's flustered appearance, yet didn't forget to tease him. Shiki, your strength has declined too much now, hasn't it? Roger shook his head, a hint of disappointment flashing in his eyes. His figure suddenly flashed. God's repulsion. Swish! Roger's speed was at its extreme, almost disappearing and reappearing in front of Golden Lion Shiki in an instant. Golden Lion Shiki didn't have time to react. He only felt a sharp pain in his chest, and a massive, overwhelming force transmitted from Roger's blade directly slammed into his chest. Bang! A dull, heavy sound. Golden Lion Shiki's enormous body, like a kite with a broken string, let out a tragic cry and was blasted away by Roger's single strike from midair. He fell straight down from the ship, like a cannonball, crashing heavily into the large mountain on the small island with a rumble. Boom! A huge explosion, dust flying everywhere. A giant pit, nearly 1,000 meters wide and shaped like a human figure, appeared. Chapter 39, Golden Lion's Compromise. Dust, as if it cost nothing, was still trickling down the edges of that massive human-shaped crater. The smoke but no damage rule seemed to have completely failed here. Golden Lion Shiki was embedded miserably and unceremoniously in the center of the large pit. His long golden hair was matted into clumps by rubble and dirt, looking exactly like a scarecrow dug out of a trash heap. His chest heaved violently as he gasped for air, each breath sounding like a broken bellows. He was clearly suffering from severe injuries. Tisk, tsk, tsk. Lin Yi strolled to the edge of the pit with his hands in his pockets and peeked down, the gloating expression on his face completely undisguised. Ride and Bullet followed him over. One had his arms crossed with an expressionless face, while the other was purely there to watch the show, though his eyes betrayed a hint of undisguised disappointment. Roger's soul form was the last to float over. Looking at his old rival at the bottom of the pit, he just shook his head slightly without saying a word. Truly fleeting, isn't it? Lin Yi clicked his tongue, his voice just loud enough for Golden Lion at the bottom of the pit to hear clearly. Just. A moment ago you were so arrogant your nostrils were pointing to the sky, practically looking down your nose at everyone. Now you're lying on the ground whimpering. Ha ha ha. He really couldn't help himself and burst out laughing while clutching his stomach, his shoulders shaking with mirth. Beside him, the corner of Ride's mouth twitched almost imperceptibly, and Roger couldn't help but smile. Only Bullet's cold face showed an even deeper expression of disappointment. This is the legendary powerhouse who once vied for supremacy with Roger? Too weak. Golden Lion at the bottom of the pit trembled at the sound of the laughter. He wanted to retort, wanted to crawl up, but his entire body felt like it had fallen apart. Even the slightest movement brought a piercing pain deep in his bones. Lin Yi laughed enough before pulling back his expression. His face darkened, and his tone became stern, like an old father disappointed in his son. Golden Lion, look at your damn self right now. He pointed at the pathetic figure at the bottom of the pit and scolded him for failing to live up to expectations. Where is the flying pirate who once struck terror into the marine? You're nothing but a sick dog. You didn't just leave your legs and impel down, I think you left your damn spirit there too. Looking all dejected, your strength has decreased instead of increasing. You've even started relying on external things, researching some bullshit IQ? Berserk animals? That kind of stuff can't even stand its ground before a true powerhouse. Lin Yi got angrier as he spoke, pointing at the iconic steering wheel on top of Golden Lion's head. "I think that steering wheel on your head has stabbed right through your brain." This string of rebukes hit Golden Lion's heart like heavy hammer blows. He listened in a daze, his head buzzing. On one hand, he was shocked that this young brat knew everything about him. On the other hand, he felt, what this kid said actually made some damn sense. Had his head really been broken by this damned steering wheel? No. Impossible. "You, shut the hell up," he struggled, squeezing a weak roar from his throat. "I haven't." This retort was weak and lacked conviction, even to his own ears. "Shiki," Roger finally spoke, his voice filled with deep disappointment. "The high-spirited you from before is worlds apart from the you now. You are wallowing in self-degradation. Golden Lion, you've disappointed me." Bullet snorted coldly, adding another blow without hesitation. Ride remained silent, but his indifferent gaze said everything. That look was more hurtful than any words. Contempt, pure and simple. Contempt from a powerhouse of the same era. Golden Lion's breath hitched. Scenes from over the years flashed before his eyes like a revolving lantern. The embarrassment of escaping Impel Down, the obsession of planning for nearly 10 years, the deep-seated hatred for the Marine. Finally, all his frustration and anger boiled down to one point. "What do you know?" He suddenly looked up, his eyes bloodshot like a cornered beast, roaring hysterically. "The steering wheel on my head. Every night when I sleep, it throbs with pain. To escape Impel Down, I didn't hesitate to cut off my own feet. My strength has been shackled and can no longer improve. Why can't I seek help from external things? Why not? Here it comes." Lin Yi chuckled in his mind, this was exactly what he was waiting for. The anger on his face vanished instantly, replaced by a profound, somewhat enticing smile. "Ha ha! Shiki, don't get so worked up." He squatted down and winked at Golden Lion in the pit. "See Roger? He was also plagued by injuries and illness before, his strength greatly reduced, but look at him now." Hearing this, Golden Lion instinctively looked at Roger. With this look, he realized something was wrong. Roger's soul form was incredibly solid, and his aura was profound and immeasurable. That kingly haki was entirely at the level of his peak strength. "Roger," he asked blankly, why has your strength recovered even in a soul state?" Roger gave Lin Yi a meaningful look, the corner of his mouth curving, but he didn't speak. "Ahem." Lin Yi cleared his throat and took over the conversation with a smug look. "That's thanks to me, of course. Inside my 10,000 souls banner, not only can you recover strength lost to injury, illness, or old age, you can even become stronger than you were at your peak." He patted his chest like a salesman peddling fake medicine. "Roger is the best example." Shiki's eyes widened in disbelief as his gaze swept back and forth between Lin Yi and Roger. He looked at Ride and Bullet nearby, especially Ride. The man had clearly been imprisoned for so many years and had aged so much, yet his strength was still terrifyingly high. Could it be, this kid is telling the truth? An indescribable flame called hope quietly ignited in his dead heart. He could recover his strength? Even surpass his peak? Once this thought appeared, it could no longer be suppressed. Finally, all the struggle, frustration, and anger on Golden Lion's complex face turned into a long sigh. He looked at Lin Yi with a hint of resignation and expectation in his eyes. "Tell me, what do you want to do with me?" He slowly closed his eyes, as if giving up all resistance. "Anyway, I have no power to resist right now." "That's the spirit." Lin Yi rubbed his hands together, a lewd smile appearing on his face. "Come, relax your mind, take a deep breath. Yes, dizziness is normal, it'll be over soon." Golden Lion, why does this sound so strange? However, he indeed did not resist. Seeing this, Lin Yi no longer hesitated and swung the 10,000 souls banner in his hand. Buzz! A powerful, irresistible pulling force instantly acted upon Golden Lion's body. Ugh! Golden Lion let out a muffled groan, feeling his consciousness being forcibly extracted from that battered body. The next second, he felt himself becoming incredibly light. He slowly opened his eyes and saw his body still lying in the large pit. Meanwhile, he himself was floating in mid-air in a semi-transparent soul form. Is this what it feels like to be a soul? He looked at his hands with curiosity. It felt not bad at all. Just as Lin Yi was about to completely bind this freshly made legendary SSR into the banner, a sudden change occurred. Roger, who had been observing from the side, suddenly had a change in expression. His figure moved without warning, his speed reaching the extreme, almost turning into an afterimage. Swish! On his right hand, a jet-black, violent conqueror's haki instantly coiled around it. The aura was so intense it even distorted the surrounding space. He reached out with his large hand, aiming directly at Golden Lion's physical body that had just been vacated by the soul and was still lying in the pit. Get the hell out! Roger let out a thunderous shout and yanked his wrist back violently. From Golden Lion's body, he actually pulled out a chaotic, constantly twisting and struggling, pitch-black thing. Chapter 40, Binding Devil Fruit Abilities. That pitch-black, chaotic mess, tightly gripped within Roger's Conqueror's haki, was like a beast trapped in an iron cage, letting out a silent roar. It constantly twisted and struggled, attempting to escape from that ink-black entanglement. Every violent tremor caused Roger's soul body to sway slightly, and the faint veins visible on his temples exposed the immense pressure he was currently under. Lin Yi, hurry! Roger growled through gritted teeth, his voice carrying an unprecedented sense of urgency. Lin Yi's heart jolted. This old man usually had a ha-ha-ha attitude even if the sky was falling. For him to show such a face now? It seemed this thing was even more troublesome than imagined. He didn't dare delay. The shadow of the 10,000 Souls banner instantly shot out from his fingertips, winding upward like a spirit snake to entwine the black shadow as well. A grim binding force, combined with Roger's Conqueror's haki, formed a dual restraint, finally stabilizing the restless devil fruit soul spirit to some extent. This thing is the core of the Flutter Fruit's ability? It's a completely different concept from a living soul. Lin Yi muttered to himself, but his movements didn't stop. He turned to look aside. Golden Lion's translucent soul body was standing there with a dull expression, the ship's steering wheel still firmly embedded in his head. Hey, Golden Lion! Lin Yi beckoned with a finger, his voice carrying a hint of teasing. Your fruit, do you still want it or not? Golden Lion Shiki's soul body trembled violently, and a ripple finally appeared in those golden pupils. He seemed not to have recovered from the shocking reversal just now. He never expected that his Flutter Fruit ability could actually be lost and found again. He had already planned to specialize in haki and swordsmanship in the future. After all, throwing away so many years of experience developing the Flutter Fruit was something he was somewhat reluctant to do. Now, hearing Lin Yi's question, the greed buried deep within his soul was instantly ignited. Ja ha ha ha. His signature wild laughter carried a hint of weakness, yet it also held an indescribable excitement. Oh, of course I want it. With a flicker of his soul body, he drifted close to Roger and Lin Yi. Roger and Lin Yi exchanged a glance and nodded in tacit understanding. The two carefully controlled the devil fruit soul spirit, bit by bit, and sent it into Golden Lion's wide-open, translucent soul mouth. Gulp! Despite being in a soul state, a clear sound of swallowing actually echoed in Lin Yi's ears. The moment the devil fruit soul spirit entered his body, Golden Lion's soul body, which had been relatively solid, began to tremble violently. An indescribable sense of rejection, like magma rioting deep within the soul, surged through his abdomen, turning his soul body red with pain. Ugh! Golden Lion let out a painful muffled groan, his hands clutching his head tightly as his soul body rolled violently in midair. The soul is going to be blown apart, he roared, his voice filled with extreme pain and fear. Use Haoshiku to suppress and digest it. Roger shouted urgently, providing an experienced reminder. This devil fruit soul spirit isn't a physical entity you ate while alive that could be easily digested. It doesn't match your soul body right now, you must use the strongest haki to tame it. Golden Lion snapped his eyes open, and a terrifying fierce light instantly erupted from his golden pupils. Ignoring the pain, he sat cross-legged on the ground. Violent Conqueror's haki immediately surged from his soul body, burning like tangible flames. Within the soul body, two distinct energies, one red and one black, were colliding violently. The red was Golden Lion's own Conqueror's haki, like an angry lion. The black was the raw power of the Flutter fruit soul, like an abyss serpent. The two strangled each other, neither yielding. The aftershocks of the collision made the surrounding air become viscous, and the pebbles on the beach vibrated slightly. Lin Yi held his breath, staring intently at Golden Lion's soul body. This was truly a struggle in the depths of the soul. Who won or lost depended entirely on Golden Lion himself. Under the black erosion, the red energy began to wither bit by bit, and the Conqueror's flames on Golden Lion's soul body became flickering and unstable. Seeing that the red energy was about to be completely devoured, a startling surge of unwillingness suddenly erupted on Golden Lion's distorted face. I am Golden Lion Shiki. A roar that shook the soul exploded like a thunderclap. This roar carried the arrogance of his reign over the seas, the ambition of his rivalry with Roger and Whitebeard, and all the unyielding pride from being trapped at the bottom of the sea, besieged by the Marines, and defeated by Roger. In an instant, that previously withered red energy seemed to be injected with a hidden, terrifying power from years past. It surged violently like an angry volcano, completely crushing the black serpent in an instant. Then, like a flood, it slowly flowed into every part of Golden Lion's soul body, anchoring itself deep within his soul. Boom! An invisible force abruptly erupted with Golden Lion as the center. Everything around seemed to suddenly lose its weight. The pebbles on the beach, the withered trees, and even the seawater in the distance began to slowly and involuntarily be pulled from the ground, hovering in midair. Holy crap! Caught off guard, Lin Yi felt his feet lighten, and he actually started flying too. He flailed his arms and legs like a country bumpkin who had never seen the world, splashing about in midair. What's the situation? What's the situation? I'm not a soul body, why am I floating just like you guys? Looking at Lin Yi's comical appearance, a smile finally appeared on Roger's tense face. He coughed lightly and explained, this is the awakened power of the Flutter fruit. Without needing to touch objects, it can turn the surrounding environment into a zero-gravity field. Shiki has finally recovered some of his strength. Before his voice finished, Golden Lion's closed eyes snapped open, and two golden beams shot out like physical objects. Rumble! An aura several times stronger than before shot up from his soul body. The pebbles and trees suspended in midair instantly shot out in all directions like cannonballs at incredible speeds, plowing countless deep trenches into the sea surface. Jia ha ha ha! Golden Lion Shiki let out his signature wild laugh once more, but this time, the laughter was filled with long-suppressed delight and flamboyance. It's been a long time since I felt this. Comfortable. This power, this feeling of controlling heaven and earth. Jia ha ha ha! Although the steering wheel was still stuck firmly in his soul's head and his legs were still empty, making him look somewhat comical, there was no doubt that his strength had steadily recovered to the admiral level. It was similar to his strength before being imprisoned and impelled down, perhaps even a bit stronger. Slap! Lin Yi stabilized himself and drifted next to Golden Lion with a teleportation-like movement, excitedly patting his shoulder as if he were patting a household pet. Not bad, brother Shiki. You've recovered with quite some spirit. He said with a beaming face, don't worry, when we get more soul nourishment later, I'll prioritize refining it for you. Then your head and feet can be restored to their original state. Hee hee, welcome to the team, Golden Lion Shiki. Hearing this, a flash of complexity crossed Golden Lion's golden pupils. He looked at Lin Yi's face, which held a bit of shrewdness and a bit of sincerity, and finally, all his defiance and unwillingness turned into a soft sigh. Jia ha ha ha! Thanks, kid, he said in a low voice, completely accepting his new identity. This time, with the dual assistance of Roger's powerful Conqueror's haki and Lin Yi's 10,000 souls banner, they successfully obtained a powerhouse who could still use devil fruit abilities in a soul state. This undoubtedly opened a brand new door for Lin Yi's 10,000 souls army. With Lin Yi's current level of fruit development, he wasn't yet capable of binding a devil fruit soul on his own, its resistance was too strong. Perhaps only after his fruit ability awakened would he be able to mass-produce souls with fruit abilities with ease. That's it for today. Meet you in next part.